Box, Mr. Flora. The regular meeting of November 27th. Jen, can we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Wallace D.
Here.
Vice Mayor Tierman.
Here.
Councilmember Abrams.
Here.
Councilmember Goodwin.
Here.
Councilmember Flora.
Finally.
In time. Officer Renfrew, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This is the time for public comment. If anyone wishes to address this body on any item not on tonight's agenda, please step to the microphone, state your name, and you have 3 minutes. Seeing none, we will close public comment. And before we start the meeting, this body met in closed session prior to this meeting, and there's nothing to report out. Before we start the presentations, can I ask the chief to give us a little report on the awards given this afternoon?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry. I was deep in conversation with Chief Celine on all things fire related, so I got lost track of time. So this evening we swore in a new officer, Officer Tyler Brooks. Tyler is a Truckee native and went to UNR and got his criminal justice degree. And after that joined the National Guard, where he's been in that service for 5 years. And he went to my actual alma mater for police academies, Napa Valley Police Academy, where we hired him. And we're very lucky to have him. He started with us a couple weeks ago, and he was sworn in and pinned this evening by his mom. So we're very excited to have such qualified and local talent on our police department. Thank you.
I think we gave 2 awards.
You want the full scoop, I understand.
Oh, well,
okay.
Let's tell the public what we're doing these days.
So we had 2 other awards that we gave out tonight. One was for a community service officer, Caitlin Safford, who was Employee of the Year. And the other one was for our Officer of the Year, who is Officer Brett Heath. Both Caitlin and Brett were nominated by their peers and selected by the Chief's Advisory Team, which is comprised of members of the department at every rank and every division. So in essence, both employees were selected for that award by their peers, which is sentimental and valuable to me because I think that's more difficult than administration picking employees and officers of the year. But both with a tremendous amount of hard work. Brett is known for just his tenacity and his work ethic. Caitlin is known most nobly for the social media posts, Nixels, Facebook, Twitter that you see for the police department are almost entirely Caitlin's creation. And as you've seen recently, we have posts that easily get 100,000, 150,000 views, and I believe we were just on BBC last week for a bear incident that we handled. So a lot of eyes on the town of Truckee because of her creativity and hard work.
Thank you, and congratulations to all 3 of them. Okay, we are going to continue with the police department, our first public presentation, and that's, as you might guess, unmanned aircraft. And Dan Olson, I think you're going to take this one for us.
I am. Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, we're here tonight to present to you our Unmanned Aerial System program. This is a program that we've developed in conjunction with the Truckee Fire Protection District. And tonight what we're going to be talking about is a type of UAVs or drones that we've purchased. They're all sitting up here on the front table. The collaboration and operations that we have with Truckee Fire, how the training went, and what type of usage we use these for. The federal regulations involved in flying these, they're different than for private parties, for governmental agencies to be able to use these in the field. And then a software program that we bought in conjunction with the drone program called Pix 4D, and I'll talk more about that in depth in a little bit. So the program started in June of 2018. We purchased the 3 drones that you see on the table. The largest one is the Matrice M210, and that one really gives us the ability to do multiple things. It's able to hold 2 separate types of cameras. One is a FLIR, which is an infrared, so we can do nighttime flying for search and rescue, things like that. And then the other one is a pretty powerful zoom lens on there that I'll show you an example of in a video that we'll show in a little bit. The second one down, the next one is the Inspire 2, and that also can accommodate the larger cameras, but only one at a time. And that would be used in different deployments around town. And then the smaller one is more for a quick deployment. We can use this also for gaining film for social media type things, marketing and things like that. This, could also be used for a quick search of, around a house or something to make sure it's safe for fire and that sort of thing. It's a lot easier to deploy, a lot quicker. As I said, the 2 different cameras that are mounted on the larger drone right now, the FLIR and the zoom, were additional additions that we put on there. And all the drones have been outfitted with a GPS tracker. In the event they were to get lost, we're able to find them with a handheld device that will lead us right up to the drone. The collaboration is something that we're really excited about, because this type of program wouldn't be something that we would do on our own, and the fire department wouldn't be able to do it on their own. It's just there's not enough justification to do the size of program that we've created to do this. As you see there, the drones have become more useful and more popular in both police and fire services in different operations. All costs of the equipment was split between the town and the Truckee Fire Protection District. And then we're currently in the throes of constructing our use manual, our operations manual for both agencies. We're kind of in the final draft phase of that right now. And then all the equipment that we have is housed at Truckee Fire, just because they had the space for all the batteries and the chargers and everything that we have. And then the training was the same for all the pilots that are flying these drones. The pilots were chosen based on their type of assignment that they have with each department. For the Truckee Police Department, we selected detectives, traffic officers, because there's traffic uses that I'll go over here in a little bit that we use these for. And then just prior experience, some officers have a lot of experience flying drones, personal drones, so we brought them into the mix to help out. Different things that we would do with these drones at this point is search and rescue is a big one for both agencies. Disaster response is another big one for both agencies. Searches on the lake for the fire department, swift water rescues. It gives us a different perspective that we can't see from the shore on different things. Specific to structure fires, it gives the fire department the ability to really size up what's there, and with the FLIR technology, they can actually see hot spots in the house in different areas from the air, so that they are able to attack that area to help them put the fire out quicker. Technical rescues, of course, and then wildfires is something that unfortunately has been something that's really come to the forefront with drone usage. For the police department, it's really could be used in detection missions that, if we have a suspicious package, we can get a lot closer to it, and aerial views and the zooms on the cameras are such that they're very clear, and we can be at a very safe distance in the air and see what's out there. And then just high risk tactical operations could be barricaded suspects or that sort of thing, that we're able to monitor the whole situation from the air. As I said, they're becoming more useful in deployments in large scale fires. This is a recent article from the Camp Fire the largest deployment of drone teams ever in U.S. history. 15 drone teams went up there to the campfire area from different agencies, whether they be law enforcement or fire. And really their role in what they did there was they were remapping towns, the whole town of Paradise, and integrating that into the GIS system with the pictures. So they were able to tell, you know, with the devastation that was there, they were able to tell where streets were, where different hotspots were, and that sort of thing for the response of the emergency personnel. As far as the training goes, all pilots received the same training, both Truckee Fire and Truckee PD. They were trained at the same time, 2 different classes. The field flight training was 4 days total for everybody. That included classroom training and actual practical flight training out in the field. And the PIX4D, which is a program that is used to do 3D imaging, was a 3-day program that all the pilots went through. Before the pilots can become operational, depending on their skill level, they have to fly and complete somewhere between 30 and 50 operational flights. As far as the federal regulations go, both Truckee Police Department and Truckee Fire Department have applied for and obtained their required certificate of waiver or authorization, which is we term as COA. And what that does is dictate the flight operations within a certain radius around airports. Anytime they would fly under the COA, they're required to submit an operational plan and log the time and areas and all that stuff for federal, for the FAA. And this is really within a certain radius of the airport. There is another certification that the pilots are all slowly being trained through because it's a much longer process, and that's the FAA Part 107. And it's basically similar to a pilot's license that they have to go through training, classroom training, and then they take a certification test. What that does is allow us to fly outside of the strict COA zone without having to submit the logging and operational plans. They still log everything for our purposes, but they don't have to turn it into the FAA. Okay, let me see if I can get this going here. So this is a demonstration video of the drone flights, and I'll just talk through it. This was taken from top of Tall Donner up in the Oberwald Wolfgang area. And I mean, the pictures here will show the difference in clarity and then zoom capability on the first 2 videos. Same area, and what you're looking at is Prosser Lake in the distance, and the zoom that they go into is about a 6-mile distance from where the drone is flying. So obviously, the closer you are, the clearer that picture would be, but it just shows the capability of the zoom and the clarity of it. The next video here, you'll see a demonstration of the FLIR camera. This is a split screen. The one on the left is the exact same footage as the one on the right. So that's just a regular camera early in the morning, and one of our officers walking down a street with the FLIR camera. So you can see how valuable this would be in search and rescue, and just locating subjects that are hiding out, or whatever the case may be. And then just some different flyover video. This will show the clarity of the zoom and looking into the river, the clarity of the water. That's our Sergeant Renfro there. And the drone is about 200 feet up. So, yeah. Danny out for a walk. And you can see the clarity of the water there. This would be very easy to see. During a swift water rescue, you can really see if anything is caught on one side or the other of rocks, that sort of thing. There is a video coming up too of an incident that occurred down in Floreston where a house actually exploded, and we got some really good aerial photographs of it. You can see the debris from what this would be really valuable for is the debris on the houses is from the house that exploded up there, and this gives the fire department the ability to map that out from on a large scale event like this, to just really see what the blast zone was, to help them during their investigation. The 3 people there, what you see is one is the pilot, one is the observer, and they'll just fly around that and take different pictures of that. But this would help their investigators to determine maybe point of origin. If there was hot spots in there, you may be able to, if there was people in there, you could see a heat signature with the FLIR camera, that sort of thing. Luckily, this house was unoccupied when the blast happened, but it's absolutely destroyed. So. Okay, let's see if I can get the presentation back up here.
While Dan's getting the presentation up, I'll just add that obviously the capabilities of the drones have a tremendous amount of use to us, but we also want to be respectful to that and also the politics around it. One of our main concerns, and really waiting till this time to roll out this program, was we had to let communities at large, not necessarily Truckee, get used to police departments having the capability to zoom in from that distance or use FLIR. So all those things can be used for good. They can also be used for bad. And it takes a lot of community trust to realize that we're not interested in flying over people's houses to watch what they're doing or peer in their windows or look for marijuana grows in the backyard. That's far from what we have any interest in doing. The vast majority of this, rather than the tactical applications, is going to be used for preservation of life and in conjunction with the fire department. So that's really, unfortunately, we've had instances where people have lost their lives in the lake, the river. We're able to locate those people quicker, and then hopefully those that are not already passed away, we can find them in forests if they wandered away with the FLIR camera. I mean, it's all those capabilities that was really our interest. In addition to what Dan's going to touch on in a bit, we were forced to make some technology purchases based on Pix 4D. Okay, thank you. I always say Pixel 4D. You'll see why. But Pix 4D. And so when we looked at some replacement of the current capabilities we have to reconstruct crime scenes and accidents, just was not cost effective compared to what these will do. And so that, coupled with the partnership with the fire department, coupled with community trust and our intentions to use it as well as our capabilities, it just makes sense that we went down this road.
So for the remainder of the presentation, we'll be talking about the Pix 4D software system. As the chief mentioned, we have a system right now called Total Station, and what that is used for is for major accident scenes, to gather information and points that we can develop different maps of the area for the investigation purpose. What the Pix 4D does is it allows us to take aerial photographs, put it into a program, and it makes a 3D image of whatever parameters we set on it. And you'll see an example of that here in a little bit with Detective Vickers will come up here and show you. So in order for us to upgrade the Total Station, it was probably going to be over $50,000 for us to do that. It's a really antiquated system, very similar to, you see a survey team out on the side of a road and just taking points and pictures and making a map. What would take us 3 hours with a road closed to map with the Total Station now will take 20 to 30 minutes with only 2 staff of a road closure to map with the drones and the Pix 4D software. Total Station, after you got all those points of reference, you would come back and an officer would take 2 to 3 hours to map out what I'll show you here in a little bit. Also, in conjunction with the drones, we also have a GoPro with a gimbal that allows us to take photographs at the ground level, which you can't do with the drone because they can't get down that far. So we can add that all into a traffic accident scene, and you would really have a 3D image from ground level all the way up and over vehicles or whatever. What the GoPro also allows us to do is map out a crime scene. If we were in a house and needed to photograph a room, we can set this to take pictures of the room, plug it all into the Pix4D software, and it would digitally map all that in a 3D image. What I talked about with the total station, this is what you got. And this would take anywhere from, say, 5 hours to 8 hours for people, and probably a total of 5 to 6 people to create. Is just points, you know, and very, you know, rudimentary drawings of what a traffic accident may be. So I think, oh, and then as far as for fire use, during fire investigations, similar to, you know, our traffic investigations, they can do flyovers of houses, they can use the GoPro and type everything into the Pix4D and come up with the 3D imaging for their investigations. Right now what we're going to do is I'm going to turn this over to Kyle, and he's going to show you an example of what Pix4D can do, and then we will take questions and hear from Chief Celine.
Okay, so I'm going to go over real quickly as far as just kind of beginning to end in operations with these things. So how this first starts out is we go to a scene that we essentially want to take pictures of, and we'll go out there, and it's as simple as bringing the equipment that you see out there, or excuse me, up on the table, and your iPhone. The Pix4D software comes with an app, a mobile app. And what that allows us to do, as you can see up here on the screen, in this particular incident, we decided to do a 3D rendering of Rainbow Bridge. And we went up there, and as I zoom in, you'll see our location right here where we were actually flying from. And we set the parameters of what we wanted to shoot. And as you can see, it's outlined right here. And what's nice about this software, as opposed to the Total Station software as you saw before, which is a very basic rendering of really any scene that you want to shoot, this has a nice overlay with Google Maps, so it really shows you what we're doing. And it's much more user-friendly and much more visibly appealing. So while we're out there on scene, again, we pretty much, on our little mobile app on our phone, we could set the parameters of where we want to shoot. We hit go, and it's an autopilot program, and the drone will be up in the air for maybe 5 minutes, depending on the size that you want to shoot, and it will take multiple pictures from different areas, all within that grid pattern that you've established. And in this particular scene, it took 210 images, so it's actually taking pictures while it's moving. It's also stopping at set points. And what's unique about this Pix4D software is that each one of these images has a lat and long coordinate GPS associated with it, and I'll explain why that's important here in a minute. But based upon all of these pictures taken, it assembles that 2D imagery while also establishing this 3D imagery. Give it a second to load up here. And you can really see, once these images come together, just the quality that this allows us to do, which the Total Station did not. This, all in all, probably took 15 minutes to do this entire rendering. And what's nice about this is based upon the lat and long coordinates in each one of those photos that would help generate this software. When it comes to maybe down the line doing some kind of traffic accident reconstruction or something like that, the GPS coordinates helps establish measuring points from point A to point B. We could choose any location on this 3D rendering and measure, and gets very close measurements of everything that we're doing here, and that helps us out big time when if we go to a crime scene, if we go to a traffic accident and have to document it and maybe go to court later down the line, we can do anything that's needed there and be precise, again, with all of our measurements. So as you can see, I finished the line there. It says from point A to point B here, that's 42 feet. It even tells you the elevation that that line was taken at. So it's pretty incredible what we can do with this, and which we did not have the opportunity to do before. So again, I'll zoom in a little bit. As you can see, the closer you get, the quality kind of diminishes. And Dan, I don't know if you were going to touch on that, or I can if you would like me to. But what's that? Yep, with the GoPro. So as you can see, as we get close here, the images starts to get distorted. What's nice about the Pix4D software is that the pictures used to create this 3D rendering, it didn't have to happen on that flyover. You could actually go with a GoPro camera, you can go with an iPhone and go do, let's say I wanted to walk around this police car right here and take numerous images, a 360 around that car. I can then upload those images to this software, and it's going to enhance the software, or excuse me, enhance the image based upon those new photos that you can do. So that really can really make this look a lot nicer. Of course, it's a little bit more time consuming, and we would use that in, you know, we wouldn't use that in everyday purposes, but if there's a reason to do it, we have that capability to do it. So this, again, we wanted to kind of just show an iconic scene here in town that everybody recognized, just to see really how cool this is, but practical application for what we're using this for. It's probably a lot less exciting, but as you can see here, we just did a mock traffic accident collision here. We went up to an empty parking lot up in the Tahoe Donner Ski area, and again, you can it's a Google map overlay that we use here to make it a lot more visually appealing and to let people understand, hey, this is what we're looking at here. We set our parameters with where we wanted to shoot the scene from. With this particular scene that we documented here, we're looking at 201 images, and again, this took maybe 5 to 6 minutes to shoot. Overall, it took about 10 minutes, so a lot quicker than having to shut down a road and be very much more manpower intensive for several hours on end to get this to get a lot less, I guess, from what we're trying to capture here. So this will be a 3D model. Again, this was a very quick overflight, so we didn't do a lot of secondary photos to enhance the 3D quality, but you know, for a 10-minute flight, it's pretty incredible what this captures on a 3D level. You can see the terrain difference and the elevation between the three parking lots. And again, if we zoom in to the fake collision here, again, we see the quality of the image reduce. However, again, if we wanted to go around with that GoPro camera or just with our iPhone and take the better pictures around the cars, it would enhance it and make it look pretty good. So with that, I think I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Kyle. Thanks, Dan. Bill Saline, Fire Chief for Truckee Fire Protection District. Thanks for having us tonight. And
I think you need to turn on your mic.
Sorry. How about Bill Saline, Fire Chief for the Truckee Fire Protection District? Thanks for having us tonight. You know, nice presentation. I think, you know, they did a nice job highlighting the value of the drones. You know, they're becoming a common tool in the fire service. On the last report from some of our periodicals, 65% of fire agencies are using a drone, and there's even, you know, more expanded capabilities beyond this that we'll get some value from. And, you know, with limited resources, being able to share that with Truckee Police Department is invaluable. We would not be able to do that on our own, and I think we'll be able to get the benefits of you know, having these specialized tools. It's sort of interesting, you know, I was thinking about the UTV, the Ranger backcountry rescue vehicle that we got a few years ago, and we all sort of joked about how, gosh, that thing's going to stay in the garage, we're never going to take that out, and we got it on a grant. And of course now people say, gosh, what would we do without that? You know, there's so many mountain bike accidents and things that we use it for. And so the same you know, observation has been made of these drones that, you know, we're going to see a lot of value. And of course, as Dan pointed out, you know, we had our first opportunity to use it in the Floreston incident, and it really helped the fire investigators. We had a number of investigators from insurance companies and fire departments and the county environmental health, and they really were trying to determine what direction the explosion was and what appliance was involved in that. And we had views that we would never
ever have before that. So that was nice. And then, of course, you know, as I mentioned, I think anytime we have an opportunity to share resources with another agency, it's just a good thing to do with the public's money. So we're glad to be able to do that. You know, there's this other side benefit that I'm sure you can imagine. You know, anytime we get to work with other public safety agencies like Truckee Police, where, you know, on day-to-day incidents and, of course, on a big emergency where that collaborative relationship and the communication that happens out on the field, on the fly, and these emergencies is really important. And this is where those relationships get built in these different sort of collaborative projects that we work on together. So I get to watch that happen in the office and watch the pilots come in and the team work together on these things. And it's a good little benefit that we don't talk about often. So anyway, that's all I had tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah.
That concludes our presentation. Do you have any questions for us?
Thank you, Dan and Chief Olson and Chief Celine. I'm kind of still in awe. I assume the team has been picked for each department and they're working as a team, and these officers here might have something to do with that?
Both teams have been picked. They've all been through the training, and some of them are. Bill actually is one of our pilots, and he's actually the first one, I think, that's going for the 107 test. So he's studying for that right now. We're using him as the guinea pig to see how hard it is, and then we'll go from there.
What was that about? Watch what you volunteer for. Okay. Any questions for any of the three of them?
I have a couple of questions just out of curiosity. Thank you for the presentation. It's really interesting. What's the maximum flight time or battery life? It sounds like you can be very efficient in getting quite a bit of information in a short amount of time, but if you had a circumstance where you needed to have an extended amount of time to view, how long can a drone fly for? Sure. On a battery?
We don't want to fly them any longer than 25 minutes. The batteries will last a little bit longer than that, but we do have backup batteries so they can come in, land, and go right back out. Yeah.
That's great. And I don't know anything about drones, but I heard somewhere along the way that flying over larger bodies of water can impact and can sometimes make them crash. Do you know anything about, are these safe over, for example, Donner Lake, or how does that work? They fly over water without a problem?
Yeah, it's. I'm sure there's some limitation to how far away from the operator they can get, but they've flown over water before, out at Boca and I think Prosser both, and you saw over the river, and it had no effect on them.
So we typically, as a general rule, and almost 100% of the time, do line of sight flying. So if we're not able to see it, we're not really flying the drone. And that's not necessarily behind a tree or a building, but meaning we're in the general area that the drone is flying. The other unique feature that these have is if they sense a problem and their software picks up that they're losing connectivity with the remotes, or they are getting too far away, or the battery power is low, they automatically have a return to their takeoff point. So if the remote goes down and the battery dies on the remote, or the drone has a mechanical issue, or the battery is getting too low, it immediately remembers the GPS coordinates where it took off and just returns to its spot and lands itself. So they're really, we joke, but they're cop proof. Yeah, you're not, in theory, you can't lose them. So they really do come back to us if they start sensing that there's an issue, and that would be true over water as well if they start to get out of their range.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's interesting.
More? Patrick?
No, I answered mine.
Okay. Dave?
All good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, wow.
I'll mention one other thing really quick. It just came to my mind because Dan Wilkins is already starting to bug me about it. You can tell that these also have very, very strong use in engineering, planning, building. I mean, and that was another variable, is that there's a lot of collaboration we can do with inside the town to capture imagery and really kind of get a sense of what a site looks like or developments look like. So there's that. I'm working on a fee schedule right now for Dan, but we're getting there.
Aha. The truth will out. I'm assuming we can use these for like mapping and things like that, that in the past, we've paid someone else to do, and to a limited degree, that we'd be able to do some of that in-house now and
Yep. Yes.
put it together.
So we'll be, over time, we'll be contemplating potentially other uses, but also potentially we may need other equipment at some point for building. We thought about building inspection, planning, engineering work, mapping. There's a lot of great uses we're going to find.
The future is here. Thank you all. We will hold public comment on all presentations when we've completed them. And thank you, gentlemen. Congratulations for being our guinea pigs. Our next presentation is one with very special award for the town of Truckee, and Dan, oh, there goes my Christmas present. Darn, thought I was going to get that. And Dan Wilsons is going to introduce this for us.
Thanks, Mayor. And I'd like to thank Rob for setting up the in-house survey department for the engineering department at no charge to the engineering department. Yeah. This item is it's really a presentation by Caltrans to the town and a few of the town's consultants. It's called an Excellence in Transportation Award. Winder Bajwa is with us. Winder is a project manager with Caltrans District 3. Winder is the person that the town was directly coordinating with at Caltrans for the Mouse Hole project. And Winder has a tough job because within Caltrans there's about 25 different divisions and specialties. There's like the biology division and the water quality division and the cultural resource division and the white line division and the red line division and the yellow line division and the pavement division. So Winder's, and it goes on. And Winder's role was to get all of those people within Caltrans working productively on the Mouse Hole project. And his job was to get all that coordinated so we had one point of contact with Caltrans. So that was his role on the project. Becky Bucar's with us. She was the town's project manager. And as you all recall, there was a lot of collaboration and coordination on the Mouse Hole project to make it successful. A lot of work with Caltrans, a lot of work with the Federal Highway Administration, Union Pacific Railroad. The Truckee Donner PUD was involved because there were some utilities, both electric and water, in the project area. We had private contractors, private design engineers, other consultants to help us out with construction management, and a whole lot of sub-disciplines within that. So it was really amazing that we were able to get the project completed, and a lot of that had to do with Winder's perseverance on behalf of Caltrans and on behalf of the town and the Truckee citizens to help us deliver that project. So with that, I will turn the presentation over to Winder.
Thank you, Dan, for those kind words. It was a very exciting times when we were working on this project. Turned out to be a great project. I heard that it has received some other awards, and I want to congratulate the town for those as well. So the award is actually called Caltrans Excellence in Transportation Award. So Mayor D and council members, thank you for giving us the opportunity to come and present this award. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the town of Truckee for winning the 2018 Excellence in Transportation Award. The Caltrans Excellence in Transportation Award recognizes excellence in transportation design, construction, traffic operations, maintenance, and planning improvements throughout California. Each year, Caltrans highlights the best of its works and its partners through this awards program. Caltrans received nearly 100 entries this year, or the year this project was nominated, from Caltrans district offices, public agencies, private contractors, and consultants across the state. Only one winner is selected for each of the 13 categories. In 2016, this project was nominated for one of the categories, the Mouse Hole project. It was nominated for what we call category number 1, the Intermodal Transportation System Awards. This award is given for projects that demonstrate an integration of motorists, bicyclists, pedestrians, persons with disability, rail and transit modes of traffic. It's a multimodal award, so it's very good because we are pushing for that type of improvements on our system right now. Some of the selection criterias, the project must successfully engage stakeholders to address local or regional, interregional, or intermodal transportation issues, which I think this project did. It provides connectivity with the other transportation modes. It demonstrates effectiveness in reducing highway congestion. And also it demonstrates an enhancement of the transportation system. And finally, it demonstrates a use of innovative and materials or processes, which I think this project excellently did. And I think Dan has done a presentation on that, the freeze method technique. That was excellent. I think it's one of the few ones, I never seen it, but it was excellent. On this summer, Town of Truckee was selected for the 2018 Caltrans Excellence Award for the Category 1. And some of the things that, some of the comments that we got from the judges was, it says, first comment was, it says, kudos for getting Union Pacific Railroad approval. As you know, it is very difficult to get approval from those folks, and I was so glad that Dan took charge of that, and I wasn't myself, because I know that Dan had to go to Omaha to get some of the approvals, and it took a lot of effort, and thank you, Dan, for that. And basically, there was a clearly extensive coordination involved between all agencies. The second thing that was really was important was this project displayed ingenuity and innovation in construction methods, that which as I mentioned earlier. This project involved 20 years of planning and extensive partnership between local governments, agencies, and companies. And I would like to recognize some of the following partners that helped with this project. Of course, Town of Truckee was the lead agency that was the stakeholder or the driving force behind all this project. Nevada County Transportation Commission was also, they participated in funding. Federal Highway Administration was also part of funding partner, as well as some of the approval processes. Placer County was also involved to some degree. Union Pacific Railroad, of course, was the one we had to get Dan had to get approval, so they were a big part of it, since we were underneath their tracks. Various public utilities were also involved. Kinder Morgan, PG&E, gas. So there was a number of utilities that we had to deal with. And then finally, the Mausol Stakeholder Committee was very instrumental in providing us the supports that they provided so that we could get this project to construction. Some of the benefits we are getting out of this project, I'm sure that Dan has mentioned this previously, but it improves the safety for pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists. That's very important to us. It provides bicycle and pedestrian along State Route 89, connecting Lake Tahoe, Truckee, Placer County, Nevada County, Interstate 80, and Lake Tahoe region. Also reduces the congestion by promoting non-motorist travel. Increases roadway capacity in the existing tunnel. The existing tunnel doesn't have shoulders. It has maybe 2-foot shoulders, so the pedestrian bicycle were using the same roadway, so it was causing congestion. It encourages healthy, active lifestyle by providing recreational facility. So that's also good. Healthy bodies. Some of the future benefits that we are hoping for is this one is the path, the one that we constructed. That section of the trucker is a section of the Truckee River Legacy Trail that, when completed, will traverse the entire town from Donald Lake to Glenshire neighborhood. So it's a part of the segment. I guess there's more to go, but it's one part of it, correct? So that is a future benefit we will get. The long-term plan is also to have this trail connect to the Tahoe Pyramid Bikeway, providing a connection to Reno and Tahoe City. Wow, that's pretty long, but if people want to travel that way, that's great. They'll get up and down. That's a lot of exercise. I wouldn't want to do it, but there's a lot of bicycle enthusiasts that will happily do it. So with that, what I like to do is I would like to first recognize some folks that were instrumental in the technical side of the project. Some of the folks that actually did the design work. I know some of them folks could not be here, so I would first like to just a certificate for a couple of people that are here. I know that Pat Casey's here. If I could have Pat Casey come up. And this is the 2018 Excellence in Transportation Award, Pat Casey, from HCR. They were the prime contractor for the engineering of this project.
Thank you very much. Very important project to us. Glad to see that it turned out so well.
Thank you. The second award or the certificate goes to, is it called Steve? Steve? Kozak. Steve is from
Thank you.
Construction Management.
Winder, the people at home can't hear you if you don't have a microphone.
So the second award goes to, the second certificate goes to Steve Kozad. He's with the Four Leaves Construction Management. They did the actual administration of the construction. So thank you, Steve. Okay, some of the other folks that are not here, just want to recognize, and Becky, if you could give those certificates to those folks. Red Robinson is not here, from Shannon Wilson Associate. They were part of the design team. Hal Stober was for construction, was part of the construction prime contractor, Gordon and Ball. Jay Allen. Of course, he's part of the Four Leaf, could not be here for the construction management of the project. So I'd like to give this to Becky so that she could. Okay. Now we are going to give the award. We'd like to present the 2018 Excellence in Transportation Award for the Intermodal Transportation System Project of the Year to Truckee Mayor Carol Wilson Dees. If you could.
I'm going to step on you for just a second, Winder. There are two other people that really need to be part of this presentation, and that's Dan Wilkins and Becky Bucar. It would not have happened without them. So they
come on.
Come on.
Come on, Becky.
The team that was peering through the breakthrough at the end of the tunnel.
Thank you.
And just a note, last week, 2 weeks ago, an award was given to the Nevada County Transportation Commission as well at their last meeting. So thank you all for a really fascinating project. I think I spent as much time there as many of the consultant companies. I have my own hard hat, my own vest. It was really unusual, so, and a great learning experience for all of us. So. Any questions from the dais? Okay. Thank you, Winder, and thank you for making the trip up. Okay. Our next presentation is a solid waste update, and Erica and I think Melanie are going to do this one.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening. I'm here to give you an update on the solid waste and recycling rollout. So we are still very much in our infant stage, but a lot has happened in the last year since Council approved the TTSD contract last December, and I'm going to just give a brief overview of what has happened in the last 5 months since the contract began. So we'll discuss the outreach that we've done, the residential participation that we've seen so far, and then I'll pass that off to Melanie to discuss the commercial rollout. And we will also have some reflections on lessons learned thus far. Just as a reminder, on the right-hand side, you can see these are the goals of why we instated a new solid waste and recycling franchise agreement. And that was really to prevent up to 3 million plastic bags from going to the landfill over the next 10 years, the course of the contract, eliminate the need to buy blue and green bags, and also reduce the recycling contamination and thus increasing the amount of materials that we can divert from going to the landfill. But really, we also wanted to see participation more actively from both our residents and commercial businesses, because as Melanie will discuss further, we had pretty low participation from our businesses prior to the new programs. So outreach, this was us on what I like to call the events roadshow from the summer, because we tabled a myriad of events, but we developed a new ad campaign, sent out 218 notices that were for every single parcel in Truckee, and those were, I think, for the first time ever, bilingual, so fully in Spanish and English, and also had an online website sign up where people can make their cart selections. And so this was from a Truckee Thursday event, and we actually had our iPads out where we could sign residents up on the spot. So if you haven't seen it, this is what our website looks like. It's keeptruckeegreen.org, and from here you can learn all about the programs, current events of the Keep Truckee Green team, search what type of materials are recyclable, and also go to the cart selection website. We had over 5,500 cart selections made on this site, which equates to 46%. So we had about half of our residents community-wide that responded and made their cart selections, which is a pretty staggering number for our first year of the program. As a reminder of what the green waste programs were, just a brief overview. Green bags ended at the end of the last contract, which was June 30th of this year, and residents had the option to opt into the green waste carts, up to 3 for free, and those are serviced every other week, May 1st through October 31st. So what we saw from this summer was 44% of all households are currently participating in green waste carts. They were delivered over the summer. TTSD delivered nearly 8,000 carts. So thanks to the TTSD drivers for all of their hard work, because those went out manually, every single cart. So 8,000 carts, if you can imagine that. And the good news is that the data that we've gotten so far from Q3 shows that they're being used. 461 tons of green waste were collected through those carts alone, and more from our other green waste programs as well. However, 461 tons were collected in the carts, and that was just looking at July through September. So that doesn't include the October number, and it actually is significantly higher than the average Q3 collection from what we would have seen in green bags from years past. Previously, the average was about 270 tons collected curbside. So even though it happened in kind of staggered stages throughout the summer, we're actually seeing a pretty high participation rate through the carts, which is great. And with that number of carts being unleashed, there's a potential to reduce about 400,000 bags from being landfilled each year. And that's within the limit of the season that we have so far. Also to note, we have 6-yard bin rentals, and those were about the equivalent of the participation as last year, a little bit higher actually, which is also noteworthy because if you recall, last year's was a much more severe storm debris pickup year. So even though we didn't have quite as much debris to be as dire, people were still utilizing those bins, which I think is just a success of the popularity of that program. So onto recycling, similar to the green carts, residents have the option to opt in. These are also serviced every other week throughout the year. And however, residents may use unlimited blue bags for free, which is continued on a weekly basis. And these have already been rolled out in Glenshire and began service in October. Next year, the remaining neighborhoods besides Tahoe Donner will receive the carts, and in 2020, Tahoe Donner will also receive recycling carts if residents should choose to opt in. Currently, 75% of Glenshire residents are participating, and there are 1,100 carts that were delivered in Glenshire. If residents have not yet made their selection, they can still do so. They just need to call TTSD directly. We don't yet have numbers on the recycling carts because we've only got the data so far through the end of Q3, but we'll get this information as we look forward in December. But anecdotally speaking, people are using the carts. Driving through Glenshire on a Thursday, you can see them out, so that's promising. And just as a reminder, I'll flip back here. This is our lovely, adorable assistant, Addie. She is displaying the correct way to put out a blue cart so that the opening is facing the street and it's 3 feet away from any other object, including your trash can. We have learned a lot in the first 6 months of the program, not even 6 months actually, but one thing that we recognize is that just as with any new program, change is difficult, and messaging, you can never have enough messaging, or you can never have too much, rather. So we're constantly trying to innovate how we get the message out to folks. But the good news is through the online sign up, we now have over 5,000 email addresses that we did not have previously. So now we can join the modern age in 2018 and communicate electronically. Although what we've learned is that it can't be just one mechanism. It has to be multimodal and attack from all sides, mailing and paper still. And that's something that we're looking at doing further. We also have increased our social media following this year. So I encourage folks, if all of the other things aren't for you, at the very least follow our Facebook or Instagram. And something that we heard a lot of feedback from residents was the desire for increased frequency and a desire to extend the greenway season. We did build the programs in a way that was modeled off of historic usage of green bags, and of course we can't predict the weather and got skunked by a very dry fall. But it's definitely something that we can look at moving forward. And a year ago when we sat here, we recognized that the programs that we put into place at that time might not be what stays in effect for 10 years. And we recognize that we may take corrective actions as we learn as we go. So something to look at, but just to, of course, remind you that any increased services also equates to an increased cost to ratepayers directly. And in addition, another thing that we've heard about is a lot of billing questions. As a reminder, can averaging went away with the end of the last contract. We added in a lot of other kind of bonuses, if you will, when with 4 extra scheduled pickups and 2 free bulky item pickups per year for residents. But we are investigating further the billing questions that have arisen, as well as we have put into place higher accountability measures through this contract. And TTSD basically has the first year to figure out how they will put into place a photo documentation process. So if anytime someone is charged an overage, there's also a photo to back that up. So yeah, we've learned a lot, but moving forward, we're looking to refine as we go along. And now I'm going to pass this off to Melanie Conti, who is our business outreach specialist. And I just want to commend Melanie for her hard work. Between Melanie and Jillian Greenberg, our other outreach specialist, they really did a lot of heavy lifting, as you'll see, for the business outreach.
Thank you. So for our commercial update, as you can recall, we implemented mandatory recycling for all of our businesses and multifamily residences. We are continuing our technical assistance for these businesses to help them implement these new programs. And we are implementing our food waste service, which will start in February of 2019. So an update on the commercial recycling. We currently have 84% of our businesses subscribed to a recycling service, and that comes out to 257 businesses and 497 recycling carts. We have contacted every single business, and we're still working on getting the last about 50 businesses subscribed. So like I said, we have contacted every business, and we have conducted 226 waste assessments where we have met with the business or spoken with them on the phone and discussed their waste stream and figured out what services are appropriate for their specific business and tried to find cost-saving opportunities if possible. We've also done 5 staff trainings where we've spoken with staff at businesses and helped them implement the new recycling programs into their everyday routine. We've also done 3 multifamily bilingual trainings. We're hoping to schedule more, but so far we've done 3 where we've trained multifamily residents about how to properly recycle in their complex since multifamily recycling was implemented in August. And back in May, we conducted 2 public workshops which were held off-site at different businesses to try to attract business owners to attend closer to their own office. So we held one at Alibi downtown, and there was one at Big Truck in Pioneer Commerce Center. These are some examples of our outreach materials. So the sign in the center and the pamphlet on the right are both delivered with every recycling cart, kind of explaining what can go in there, how to use it, and these are both in Spanish and English. These are some materials passed out to multifamily residents, again explaining what can go in their recycling cart, how to utilize the programs that are available to them, and again, bilingual messaging. So we've also been conducting a waste characterization study. So we've been following 10 businesses that were randomly selected from various business types, and we've been tracking their waste. We've done 3 samples so far, which 2 were a baseline study, and we've done 1 post-study since recycling's been implemented. And we've essentially gone through their waste and categorized it by material type. We left out the picture of us in our Tyvek suits, but the picture on the right kind of shows the methodology. The chart on the left shows the breakdown of material type by business, or by all of the businesses we've sampled. And as you can see, about 1/3 of that is organic material, and the items on the chart from paper to plastics 1 and 2 are all recyclable. So that is about 20% is what it adds up to. So again, this is very preliminary data. We've only done 3 samples so far, but so far it aligns with the statewide waste characterization data that CalRecycle conducted. And from that data, we've seen a 119% increase in a separate clean recycling stream. So like Erica said, we had very little participation from businesses using blue bags previously, and with these new recycling programs and the 10 businesses we've sampled, we've seen a 119% increase. So our data from our hauler, TTSD, in Q3, they've collected 25.8 tons of commercial recycling. And again, that's clean materials that we previously were commingling into our regular trash. So this is really important to note that this is clean material that we're increasing the chance of it actually being able to be recycled once it gets to the recycling facility. So our next steps, we are implementing our food waste services starting in February. So we're doing outreach to the about 60 businesses, which will be required to have a food waste service. And we're continuing adaptive management of our programs, continuing to collect data and keep in touch with businesses and help them figure out issues and solve them as they arise. And some lessons learned from our commercial rollout. We knew going in that space would be an issue for some businesses, and we learned that was true. So we're still working with especially our commercial row businesses to figure out some solutions with adding new containers and trying to find possibly a shared recycling dumpster to free up some space in that back alley. And we're continuing constantly refining our outreach and figuring out what works best to get participation and get engagement and try to reach out to as many businesses as we can. And that's it. Do we have any questions?
Thank you, ladies. Questions? Patrick?
Well, no, more on the comment side of things, but one, well done. I mean, I think just the initial data that you have, even with the steep learning curve of rolling out the processes, is really encouraging. Second comment, sort of anecdotally, to the extent that you can, I would strongly encourage you to work with TSD to improve their customer service capabilities. I got a bill for $100+ last quarter and spent 3 days and 12+ phone calls and got no live person or a way to leave a message. So there's a little room for improvement there.
I would echo the props. I'm very impressed that the number of tons of green waste hauled, I think, is a huge thing, especially when you look at the number of green bags saved. I didn't catch for the year 2 blue carts, everyone other than Towdon or in Glenshire. When in 2019 is that? What season? What month are we looking at?
Great question.
It's one of those questions.
We anticipate, I think, trying to coordinate with the rollout of the green waste carts for next spring. However, that also kind of depends on some variables with TTSD. So I would say spring to summer of next year.
Erica, you might remind the public that they will not automatically show up. The public does need to sign up for those.
Yes, thank you, Mayor D. As I said, residents, if you haven't signed up, you haven't lost your chance. You can still sign up for your carts at any time. If you previously thought that you didn't want one and you filled it out already online, you just simply need to call TTSD, or I'm more than happy to help you as well. You can email me at the town and we will get you signed up. At this point, any new signups for green waste carts is a pre-order for next spring, and those will be delivered, weather pending, prior to the May start date. And again, that it depends on the amount of snow on the ground. Hopefully.
David?
Yeah, no question. Just echo the comments, commending all of you, Melanie, Erica, and Jillian. Fantastic work, and the diversion from the landfill of the plastic. Totally agree. That's fantastic, and great to see that this is off to such a impactful start. So keep up the great work.
I'll pass on a comment to you that came to me over the weekend. I happened to run into an old friend who sat on the board of an organization that I ran in my former life, happens to be on the management team of one of the largest waste management companies in the Greater Bay Area, specifically in recycling. And he said, wow, we've been watching Truckee. And that told me that once again, we are the little town that does. And you guys have made a yeoman's effort to get this out and negotiate this contract, and doing a super job. So, congratulations. Any no more questions, comments? I believe we have one more presentation, but I'm not sure who's going to do it. Chrissy. Kim, in view of the weather this evening, and that she had a very early Parsec meeting in Sacramento tomorrow morning, left this afternoon. So Chrissy is going to update us on our quarterly financial statement. I didn't have the heart to tell her she was still going to hit really, really bad traffic over the summit, but...
Well, I think she's almost to Sacramento, so...
Oh, she did better than I did today.
Here we go. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening. I have a financial update for you tonight where I will provide some updated information on the town's primary general fund revenue sources, as well as a brief update on our TOT compliance efforts. To start off, I'll remind everyone that the town's general fund has three main revenue sources, going in order from largest to smallest: property tax revenues, sales tax, and transient occupancy tax. So these three revenues we focus a lot of effort on to keep tabs on and review, get as current information as possible to monitor any trends, which then will be used in our shortly upcoming budget cycle. So we pay close attention to these revenue sources. The good news is we just received the updated letter from the county, from Nevada County, regarding our property tax collections for fiscal 18-19. And the property tax estimates are coming in higher than expected. So that revenue source, while we budgeted about 11.1 million, we're expecting closer to 11.4. So that's about a 5% increase in our property tax from the actual that we received in fiscal 17-18. So that's a good positive trend, and we will be continually refining our estimates as we get closer to the budget for the upcoming years. Sales tax is also a positive looking trend, but with some caveats that I'll touch on in a moment. You can see the fiscal year 17-18, which ended June 30th. We have finalized our revenue figure for that year, and we came in about 4.3 million, which was a 6.8% increase over the prior year. That number was pretty significantly higher than what we had expected, and we have just received updated information from our sales tax consultant for a revised estimate for our 18-19 fiscal year budget for sales tax. Now, the caveat on these numbers is, while it looks great right now, and we hope that it stays looking great, what happened was the state of California implemented a new software system to collect the data on the sales tax remittances. And there were a significant amount of sales tax returns that did not get processed in a timely fashion or in time to include in the reporting for the fiscal year that ended June 30th. So we've been able to work with our consultant to get information on all of the missing tax returns that were not filed to properly account for them in the proper fiscal year, but these numbers are definitely subject to adjustment pending future adjustments by the state to allocate the funds to the correct time period. So we're cautiously optimistic that we will continue to see an upward trend in our sales tax. But again, this is definitely an area where we will be constantly monitoring, especially as we move into the budget process, to analyze the trend here. The data that we've received for the most recent quarter available for sales tax is for the quarter that ended June 30th. So in this chart, you'll see that building and construction remains our highest generating sector for this quarter and experienced a significant increase year on year from the same quarter last year. So building and construction experienced a 17.5% increase in sales tax. We can guess that that was perhaps related to a little bit more availability of building activity versus snow on the ground and weather from the 16-17 year. The state and county pools for this quarter was the second highest generating sector of sales tax. That sector continues to grow. That's primarily related to online sales. So that's the money that when folks here buy items online and pay sales tax, all that money goes into a county pool, and that money gets allocated out to the town based on our proportionate share of in-town sales. So that number continues to grow. Those two sectors seem to flip-flop by quarter sometimes about which generates the most, but those are our two highest generating sales tax sectors. Overall for the quarter, and this is based on the adjusted data that our consultants have worked on to try to allocate the money to the proper time periods, overall we're seeing a 4.4% increase for this quarter. And if you remember just from a moment ago, we were seeing for the year end a 6.8% increase overall. So that's good news, and hopefully it stays good news. Our third largest revenue source for the general fund is our transient occupancy tax, and that again, we are seeing positive trends. So for the 17-18 fiscal year, we came in just 0.4% under our record year in 16-17. And if you'll remember, in fiscal 16-17, there were two primary factors which we believed impacted the high revenue that year. One was the significant snowfall. Weather over the history of transient occupancy tax definitely has an impact on the amount of tax generated, or I should say good ski weather. And the second factor was we started working with host compliance in fiscal 16-17, which generated a pretty significant amount of back tax payments in that year. So the fact that we ended up so close to that revenue for the 17-18 year really indicates that that trend is still continuing to increase. We've just recently been able to look at the preliminary numbers for our first quarter of the current fiscal year, which ended September 30th. So the collections for this quarter ending September 30th are 12.6% increase compared to the same quarter in 17-18. So it felt like a busy summer. It looks like it in terms of TOT revenue. Again, we will be monitoring this revenue source as we move into the budget cycle. We did budget $3.15 million for this revenue source in the 18-19 budget, but that will be continually monitoring our results by quarter to update that figure. Oops, wrong direction. All right, and then an update on what we are doing with our TOD Compliance Program. It is the third largest revenue source for the general fund. It's a significant amount of tax funds. We do have a contract with Host Compliance, who's a third-party consultant who helps us with essentially data extraction and monitoring, as well as a half-time analyst in the admin services department who is solely focused on the compliance monitoring program. So there's really a few different parts of what we're doing. We have compliance monitoring for all of the online listings. So that's where host compliance plays a huge role in scanning the online rental sites for all of the listings for short-term vacation rentals and truckee. Currently, I just looked today, there are 2,749 listings that host compliance is monitoring. Those listings represent over 1,400 unique properties. So it's very common for folks to list their house on multiple websites like VRBO, Airbnb, and such. And host compliance pulls the data from many of those websites. We also are on a schedule where we are sending monthly compliance letters out to property owners when we have identified the property and they're not yet registered with the town. So we have a series of 3 correspondences with different timelines, but those are being monitored and sent out on a monthly basis, and our analyst works very closely with host compliance to follow up on all of those letters. To date, since we started working with host compliance, the first letters were sent out in October of 2016. We've sent out 971 letters to property owners, and overall we have over 80% compliance rate, which means the property owner has either registered and is now submitting tax returns, or the listing has been removed and they've ceased renting their property short term. So we feel like that's a pretty good compliance rate. We do have the best success with the first notification to the property owners, which essentially lets them know what the rules are, asks them to file the proper tax returns. Another huge piece, and I think a big improvement in our customer service, is we went live this last year with our online registration and payment portal, and we continue to see increases in utilization of that portal. So just for this quarter that ended September 30th, of all of the individuals who filed tax returns, 70% used the online system. So we're really happy with that figure, just encouraging folks to utilize that system instead of filling out a paper tax form and writing a check and sending it in the mail. Our registration activity has also continued to increase, so we continually receive registrations for new properties, and we're up to almost 1,800 individual properties that are registered for short-term rentals. That includes our hotels, which we have a small number of, our individual homeowners renting out their own homes, as well as property managers that list properties for many owners. And then finally, the last main piece of our compliance program is our rental activity monitoring, where we have the ability to request documentation from our property owners to essentially verify their rental activity. Right now, that component is being used in conjunction with our letter process. So when we're sending out our letters to folks, asking them to get registered, and we have the ability to essentially audit the information that we're receiving. So those are the main pieces of our TOT compliance program. And as you can see, our TOT revenues continue to increase, so this is an important area of focus for us. Coming soon, at your next council meeting, we will have the results of fiscal year 17-18. So we are in the final stages of completing our audit for the year ended the June 30th, and we will have on the agenda a presentation to report back the results of that audit with some more in-depth information on the year-end figures. And right after that, you can guess, we will be starting the budget process. So it will follow a very similar schedule to every other year, but the budget process for the fiscal year that starts July 1st of 2019 will kick off in January, And I'm hoping that when we present the financial report to you next meeting, we'll have a very preliminary schedule that we can share with you at that time. But just a chance to remind everyone that that will be coming up very soon.
I wish you all the best with that.
We'll miss you. That's it, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chrissy. Very strong report. Jeff, did you want to add something? No. Okay. Questions or comments for Chrissy? Morgan?
Thanks for the great update, as usual. Very quick minor question here, but when we collect online, if we allow people to pay their TOT online, is that a credit card payment?
We allow either credit card or an ACH deduction. Yeah. The fee is passed on to the property owner. And so the credit card, I believe, is a percentage of the amount they're paying regardless, but the ACH fee is capped at $5.
That was going to be my question. Thank you.
Well, since we're throwing kudos out, I think staff deserves a large kudo for just the amount of effort that's gone in since 2013 and how that's translated into level playing field for everybody that's out there as well as for the town. So well done.
Thank you very much.
Any other comments? Okay. We will open all 5 of the presentations up for public comment. Don't everybody hurry. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. And
is there one? There is one.
Oh. Okay, we'll reopen. Oh, you've got 3 minutes. Please state your name.
My name is Pam Stock. I'm currently a resident of Glenshire and the president of the HOA board. And I'd like to comment on the blue and green waste because we've noticed some challenges in Glenshire. But I do want to commend the people for wanting to extend the green waste time because I think that's needed. Currently, the blue recycle bins are too large to fit in some garages, and we have a lot of people in Glenshire that don't even have a garage. So it's hard to keep them out of public view. And I'll tell you from personal experience, 3 weeks ago, mine wasn't picked up. And so we called and they said, well, put it out the next morning and we'll pick it up. We put it out, it wasn't picked up. So then they said, put it out on Thanksgiving between 5 and 6. And I said, 5 and 6? And they said, well, you can put it out the night before. So our problem, though, in Glenshire has been that people are putting them out the night before, and then we have this very large bear, but dogs and raccoons and things, because they're not animal proof, get into them, and now we're finding garbage, not garbage, but recycled garbage on the ground. And a lot of people, we know we're supposed to clean everything so it hopefully cuts down on the food smell, but I think there are a lot of people that don't do that. And so anyway, I just would like them to consider some of the challenges that we continue to have. And I understand there's a compliance person that's coming around and sending letters to people who are putting that out too soon. But I'd like to see more of that. And the last thing is, I live with a very steep slope to my driveway. And in the winter, going down the driveway with that blue bag, I don't think it's going to be possible if it's icy, because it's very steep, and if you can't hang on to it, it gets it gets rolled into the next neighbor's yard. Thank you.
Thank you for your concerns. We can't address anything not agendized, but I can tell you, and Erica's going to give me the sign if I'm wrong, the non-pickup issue will be addressed. Yes. As far as storage of the containers and having them out of sight, that is not a garbage company concern. That is a homeowner association determination. And I can't advise you on how to enforce your rules on that. It is going to be a learning curve, and it's going to be frustrating at times, and the bears are going to be frustrating at times. I do agree, putting it out the night before is kind of a problem, but 5 or 6 in the morning is early even for me. But we will send your concerns on to the garbage company.
Hi, Lori Kelly. I live in Glenshire and work at the association. I'm just going to piggyback on to Pam. We are appreciative to be the first recipients of these. It's been great for the most part. Amazing the amount that's been recycled, the numbers, and the green waste. And I haven't heard one person that does not like the green waste bins. I think everyone has one almost. So it's been great. One thing someone has mentioned is the size. Can there be possibly smaller ones for the driveways, whether they're steep up or steep down? When they're full of pine cones, they're really difficult to push around if you don't have that ability. So that's one thing. The recycle ones, we've had a lot of input. That's why I'm here. We're getting lots of calls, lots of emails consistently about the wildlife. Everyone is concerned. And storing these containers inside is hard. I don't know. It might not be cost effective to consider an animal proof for everyone, or maybe blue bags that are biodegradable, but something that will work to keep the wildlife safer. So that's something that's happened. And then I will piggyback onto the TTSD. We have not had success in communications with them. We're told something different than the town tells us. So everyone's confused what to do with their green waste when we didn't have the bins. So we still have people with green bags not knowing what to do with them. So maybe that, I don't know. We tried to help with that, so we haven't gotten anywhere. So that's it, and thank you. So it has been great, Erica and Melanie. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. I know that Erica and her team will pass those comments on to the waste company, and I have no idea, but possibly future discussions could discuss different sizes. Thank you. Anyone else? Going. Public comment is closed. We're going to move to the consent calendar. Item 6.1 is minutes of the November 13th meeting, regular and closed session. 6.2 is the Mills Act Historic Preservation Contract Agreements. 6.3 is the Treasurer's Report. 6.4, appointment of members to the Truckee Tax Measure Citizens Oversight Board. 6.5 is the request for purchasing authority for Development Group, Inc. in excess of $50,000 for fiscal year 2018-19. Any member of this dais want to pull an item? I know Judy wanted to pull 6.1.
Thank you, Mayor.
Any staff member want to pull any other item? Any member of the public? I would entertain a motion for 6.2 through 5.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Judy?
Yes, I received a phone call from Pat Davison from the Contractors Association of Truckee Tahoe, pointing out an error in the minutes on page 14. It was noted that she had made a comment when, in fact, somebody else had made the comment and quoted from a letter she wrote. So I've made those corrections. They're available, and I'd like to amend the minutes and ask for your adoption of those as amended.
And you have already provided those to us?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Is there public comment on the
public comment on the correction, which they haven't seen, which they probably understand. Everybody's running. Close public comment. Okay, Patrick has moved.
Remove. We approve the 6.1 amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Okay, I'm going to pull privilege and ask for a 5-minute before we start discussions and reports. Sorry. Aha, now it is. We will reconvene our meeting. Discussion item 7.1, staff report on the Grace Crossing specific plan cleanup direction.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will make a couple of very brief framing comments, and then Yumi Don will do the bulk of the presentation. Just two very important things to kind of reiterate up front, or say up front, that I think Yumi will emphasize. One, we are just looking for some council direction this evening. There's not a formal decision to be made, because that decision will go back to the Planning Commission and then come back to you or come back to the next council. But we would really appreciate this direction, because as you'll see, we see this as ostensibly a cleanup item, essentially to try to bring the specific plan up to a place where it has a considerably more clarity than it currently does, which will be very helpful in trying to deal with any kind of development or developers on the final parcels that aren't developed, because right now there's some concern, there's some clouds and issues that are hard to understand with the specific plan, which dates back to 2004. And then secondly, to be able to kind of modernize it, because it is 2004 document, kind of bring it up to speed, given a lot that's happened since that time. So with those comments, I'll let Yumi go through the details.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. As Jeff said, this is just a directional discussion to provide us with some comments, so that we know what direction you'd like us to go in, so that we could then return to Planning Commission and then return back to you for final consideration of an action. So just to give you a little background, Grace Crossing, which is also known as PC2 in our community, Plan Community 2, is located on north of Interstate 80 on either side of 89 North. So there's single-family residential, a golf course clubhouse, some commercial, a restaurant at the golf course clubhouse, and then there are several other parcels that we'll discuss today. There's also developed a 92-unit affordable housing project called Hennis Flats. So back in 2004, this specific plan came forward under one master developer. The specific plan, tentative maps, development agreement, zoning map amendment, and an EIR were all moved forward at this time under this one master developer. So back then, this was what was approved. We had 92 affordable rental units that was approved, which check, we did that. There were 89 cottage units that were approved but not built yet. There's 115 attached units, some affordable, that have not yet been fully built out. Only 17 have been constructed, which you see at Annie's Loop. Those are those larger townhomes next to the golf course. 408 market rate single family lots have been created and many have been sold. Truly only 377 were created of the 408 that were approved. And then there's a commercial component within the Grace Crossing specific plan area that included, which is called the Village, which included approximately 48,000 square feet of commercial floor area, which within your staff report, I stated it was 39,000. Would like to correct that today. 120 hotel rooms, a conference facility, community cultural center, gas station, and church site were all envisioned within that village center. Golf course, open space, and church were all built out with approvals. And through the Grace Crossing specific plan and the development agreement, this was anticipated, it was a phased development that was anticipated to be built out in 2009. Obviously, that has not occurred. So with the development agreement, which is a tool to negotiate terms for large development projects and to provide certainty to both parties, we have accomplished the transit plan, the trail construction, and dedication of real property through the development agreement. There are still some components that are ongoing through local economic benefits, local recreational benefits, and open space funding are continuous throughout the development of Grace Crossing. And then the three items that have not yet been constructed are the affordable housing components, aside from the 92 rental units, the community event center, or the use of the village for community event center since the village has not been built, and the performing arts center. Of note, the development agreement, where all these items would be required to be built, expires in March. So there is a timing component to this discussion. So of these are the undeveloped parcels that are available within Grace Crossing. The cottage site, which is the 89 cottages were envisioned in this location. Parcel F, which is across the street from PJ's and the golf course clubhouse, which was envisioned for attached housing units. The undeveloped village site, which is that commercial component with some residential. And then Parcel D, which is next to Hennis Flats, which was envisioned for attached residential units. And we do have some potential developers of the cottage site and parcels D and F here today, and a current applicant for the village site is here today as well. The development agreement is what has the requirements for affordable housing for Grace Crossing. The specific plan doesn't provide that. So once the development agreement goes away, we will no longer have affordable housing requirements within the specific plan. But to identify what is required currently with the active development agreement, Parcel D, which is the one next to Hennis, or Parcel D, Parcel F, and the village were all envisioned for attached residential of 115 units. Of those, 74 of those units were anticipated to be affordable in some form. The village also had 21 live-work lofts that doesn't have affordability requirements, and then the cottages site, of the 89 units, 59 were required to be affordable of some sort. So just to give you a quick background, this is the map that was adopted as part of the specific plan that shows the single-family village, Hennis Flats down here, and the cottages over here. And down here on the bottom right, it says 408 units were approved for single-family, 89 cottage units, 115 attached units, and then the 92 affordable rental units, which is what we discussed as part of the development agreement. Here's the cottages, the 89 lots as a zoomed in look. The attached units next to PJ's to the north, and then next to the existing Hennis Flats to the south. And then there was some attached residential envisioned within the village area. So today we're here to talk a little bit about the Grace Crossing's issues. As Jeff noted, it was adopted in 2004. Things have changed significantly. We've gone through a boom and then a bust, and now seems like we're in a little bit of a boom. The specific plan was envisioned to be built out by one developer, East West Partners at the time, and now there are multiple developers. So there is an overall shared density within the Grace Crossing specific plan that now that there's more than one developer, there's kind of a vying for each of those allowable developable units. The specific plan had a clear phasing and development numbers that has not been met, so the development agreement phasing plan has not been met, and the market has clearly changed, and the development as envisioned is no longer desirable, is what we hear from our developers. As you know, there's also Mello-Roos issues with the TD-PUD, and to resolve these issues, development of these sites is desirable. And then, as you know, the development agreement is going to expire in March, so with that, we would lose our requirements for affordable housing. So today we're talking about the potential pathways to move forward. In the long-term scheme, staff believes that the cleanest path to resolution is to dissolve the specific plan. It has outlived its usefulness to some degree, and we believe that we could move forward, dissolve the specific plan, apply density and zoning that is consistent with our development code, and rely on our development code standards moving forward. However, with our general plan update process, we think that the best pathway for that solution is to put that into the general plan update process and have a larger community discussion. However, we still have the short-term need to find some sort of solution for current developers that do want to move forward now. So we are asking today that Council consider some minor amendments to bridge the gap until the general plan update is completed and allow these projects to continue. As noted in your staff report, there's 4 larger topics: affordable housing, density, commercial square footage, and then 1 cleanup amendment that's proposed. So the first question is, should we apply the town's inclusionary and workforce housing requirements for future development of the undeveloped parcels once the development agreement expires? So that'd be the 15% inclusionary housing requirement or the workforce housing requirement to the village project. We would recommend at this time that you direct us to amend the specific plan to identify that the currently undeveloped sites should be required to meet the current development code standards. This would be the same requirements as the rest of the community, put everyone on equal footing, and then it would also provide affordable housing that we do not envision will actually be built under our current development agreement. Density. There are two questions under density. The Grace Crossing specific plan envisions a overall 725 housing units within our within the specific plan area. It also identifies and breaks it down by single family, cottages, attached units, and we're asking that for environmental impact purposes and for the specific plan to consider the 725 units as the overall density rather than the breakdown of each number. We would likely say that likely require that single family can be converted to attached residential, with the idea that they would likely be smaller, more efficient, and have reduced environmental effect. The town council could give us direction on if you would want to go the other way. Attached residential units could be single family, and to discuss the consequences of that. The second question in density is, should the dwelling unit equivalent be used in the Grace Crossing specific plan? So the DUE is something that's within our development code that allows or incentivizes developers to increase their density within a site. So studios are considered 0.5 units, 1 bedroom is considered 0.67 units, 2 bedroom is considered 80% of a unit. Once you get to 3 bedrooms or more, it's considered 1 unit. So that would allow for more studio units on a site than if you were to propose a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom site, a 3-bedroom project. So a project that has a density of 10 units per acre could have 20 studio apartments on the project, whereas it would have only 10 3-bedroom units. So the staff would is requesting that town council consider these. Oh, that's not correct. To consider the dwelling unit equivalent to put that in the Grace Crossing specific plan. There would be some environmental effects that staff would have to take a look at before we propose it as an actual action item for consideration, but at this point we would ask that council direct us to move forward with at least researching it at this point. And then commercial square footage. This is based on an application that has come in and that has proposed half the amount of commercial that was originally envisioned within the village. And should this amount of, should the commercial square footage in the village be considered more flexible than what is envisioned within the specific plan? There are benefits to having a neighborhood commercial center within a residential area. There's increased pedestrian access, less dependence on vehicles to access other commercial centers, and then it has opportunity to provide more neighborhood serving commercial uses that we don't necessarily have within our community. And then finally, the last item is a miscellaneous cleanup to add general language that says that where the specific plan is silent, that the development code would be the governing document. Usually, that's generally, we're thinking that that would cover standards like what to do when you're in an easement or how to deal with fencing in the community. That language isn't in the specific plan currently, so we wanted to find some sort of path forward if we ever came up against that, a situation where we needed to. So based on the direction provided tonight, we would work on any amendments that council directs us to move forward with, and then we'd return to Planning Commission and Town Council for review and approval. And then if Town Council directs us to, we would then put the Grace Crossing specific plan area into the general plan and housing element update for consideration.
If I could just underscore two points that I think, thanks Yumi for doing that, that was really good. The first one was the 725 unit total cap. So that's the total number of units that, of all types that were originally envisioned. And we believe that that should remain because then there won't be any more additional impact, and that's appropriate. But the reason for getting rid of some of the specificity in types is to allow some flexibility. Clearly, the types of development that people want and the types of development that developers are proposing today is very different than in 2004. And that dwelling unit equivalent idea and the idea of keeping the cap but allowing some trading, if you will, between sites and different residential types would allow flexibility. I think it's pretty important to make these parcels viable. Secondly, just a little bit of background that I think you didn't say, but I think many people know. East-West Partners, not sure if that was the correct name back in 2004, but the one developer that Yumi described went bankrupt in effect and dissolved. And as a result, the development agreement really, while it looks viable on paper, really isn't viable, because the development agreement is essentially a contract between the town and a particular developer. That particular developer no longer exists, and now we've got some smaller developers looking at individual parcels. Obviously, they're not going to be beholden, nor could we ask them to be beholden to that agreement. So I think that's very important, because it appears that this affordable housing was kind of there and would get built, but in fact we know it wouldn't. It'll expire in March, and it simply wouldn't happen. So to preserve some level of affordability, we're moving back to development code. So I think that's an important nuance that could be lost if you just look at the kind of paper-to-paper transaction. Anyway, with that, Danielle, you have anything to add? Or we're open to questions, and then...
Thank you. Questions? David?
Yeah, given that the development agreement expires in March, is that mid-March, or when in March is that?
March 20th.
March 20th. And the other party who is signatory to the agreement is no longer in business. Is there a mechanism or a possibility of terminating that agreement earlier?
It could be done. The obstacle could have been IFIC, which was the bonding company that ended up with some rights under the DA, but they agreed to waive our obligation to have them consent to any termination of the DA. But we would have to go through the process of either getting consensus from everybody who is holding any rights under the DA, and ascertaining that could be a little bit interesting. Or alternatively, we'd have to go through the process of declaring everybody to be in breach, and then providing an opportunity to cure, and that would be interesting as well. So the simplest path is to just let it expire, but if there was an urgent need to try to terminate it sooner, we could.
Okay, so everything you just described would probably take longer than the three and a half months that remain.
It easily could, yes.
Okay. And then in terms of CEQA, in considering some of these alternatives, increasing density, et cetera, would that be a simple matter of some kind of an EIR addendum? What might that look like?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't done the full assessment yet, but our hope is that because we've at least looked at the density totals, that there would be a pretty similar circumstance with what we assumed as the baseline under the development agreement in the specific plan. So we don't anticipate, say, having to do a full new EIR. We don't think we'll have to take any CEQA action. Worst case scenario would be something like an addendum, which is a staff level type of couple pages usually you prepare to show kind of that logic of why there's no change in environmental circumstances to that. That is something that we'll get into if council gives us direction to move forward to kind of look further at that. But at least in Yumi's kind of preliminary review, it seems like because the density is usually the thing that you go after first, that's the baseline we'd be using is very similar.
And with the commercial square footage declining and the single family detached units declining, in fact declining substantially, since only 371 of the lots actually got created, and we were fairly certain the impacts will actually be a bit less, certainly in the same general area.
Okay. And then of the affordable housing, so 92 were constructed, Hennis Flats, and does Freshman Hollow count, or is that part of that? That's in addition to the 92. I think that was a donation, right?
Yeah, we didn't count those.
Okay. So in addition, right now, the current specific plan calls for an additional 115 units. Is that what I understood?
It is around 133.
Okay. Yeah. And then final question for now, there was mention of a church. A church was constructed and land was donated, correct? It may not have been at the village site, but...
2 church sites were actually contemplated. So the one Assumption Catholic Church was built with land donation, but there wasn't one envisioned within the village.
Okay, thank you.
And the site for the rec center as well was actually donated.
Correct.
Yep.
Yep.
Actors?
Well, just to sort of tag on to David's, and just to clarify, you're not anticipating any, if we go forward with the DUE density, no triggers showing up there that would really drive additional environmental review?
We haven't yet done the environmental review, but there could potentially be some environmental triggers that would fall outside the use of an addendum for the EIR. And I think if this is a cleanup item that we're proposing today or in the future, then anything beyond an addendum may be something that we would have to reconsider.
So I'm guessing that would be a neg deck?
Yes.
Mitigated neg deck.
Potentially. Yeah.
Martin?
I'm curious to hear a little more about the kind of what the proposed changes are for the village site, the commercial. Obviously, we're not looking at projects or plans, but it seems to me that if a developer, I'm not sure what the point is really of saying that there's a 20,000 square foot commercial space instead of the 39 that's approved. Like, couldn't you always just build less than is approved?
Yes, you can, but in terms of environmental impacts. But the specific plan does show a community center and a church site, and the current proposal takes up the entirety of the village site, which doesn't leave room for any potential other uses. So
Even though it's half the square foot.
It is half the square footage, but the other components, particularly the residential, is a much larger square footage.
Okay, so it's change in the commercial square footage is one aspect of it, but really it's sort of looking at a different land use, different notion of how to use that site.
Yes, and whether or not commercial is something that the council supports in that area currently, or if we can go in a different direction.
Yeah. Yeah, the follow-up on that, I appreciate the BAE letter and, addressing head-on the competition with downtown, which I think is a concern. It is certainly worth further consideration with the council. But the other concern is that, especially if this is a gas station kind of use, to me it seems like the business would be aiming for freeway traffic coming into Truckee from the east. And so holding this up as a neighborhood commercial is different than we all know how much traffic comes off kind of the Donner Pass Road on the west end of town into those gas stations. So I would want to be clear about what we're going for on that. I guess I'm versioning the discussion. It's not really a question, but I guess the question really is kind of how much of that is really relevant in tonight's discussion.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we looked at with this specific plan is that it doesn't have the criteria of this is a hard and fast, you must build this or you can build less. And so when we had an application come in and we started to look at sort of the differences between the specific plan and the application, it gave us some pause to think about sort of this larger discussion about, well, what was this envisioned? Because the plan calls it out as sort of a village setting, more geared towards neighborhood uses, but did allow for things like a hotel and a gas station, which aren't necessarily totally for the neighborhood, but could service the neighborhood for sure. So I think for your discussion, what we're looking for direction on is, does it make sense to allow for a lesser amount of commercial in this area? And if so, should we kind of go in that direction and look at the implications of that a little bit more? That can be done with changes to the specific plan. So it's not necessarily answering the question now, it's just, should we make some clarity in the specific plan about talking about the specific issue?
And that's one of the challenges of the Grays Crossing specific plan. There is a very specific construction phasing outline within the Grays Crossing specific plan that doesn't say if it's a minimum or maximum, like Danielle said, but says within 5 years, 50% of the village will be built out at X square footage. And then the second phase, the next 5 years, the rest of the village will be built out, which is a little vague and a little specific, so it makes it a little difficult to.
It makes sense that we need to do something to bridge the gap between now and this development agreement expiring. I guess my question, and I don't know if I should just save it for deliberation or if it's something that can be addressed now, is what level of concern or awareness should we have if we currently have developers showing interest in these parcels, yet we also have a general plan update coming, and we, I believe as a council, have communicated that we want to have sensitivity around people starting with projects and becoming involved financially and with their time and starting to move things forward. And so if that starts to happen with these parcels, and then we have a general plan update that may impact what we're discussing now or having you start on, what concerns does that bring up?
I mean, I think we see this working in parallel, which is the direction that council had given us previously, that if an application comes in, we'll still continue to process that concurrent with the general plan update. Could there be some overlap in dialogue? Probably, and I'll give you an example of that on Thursday when we do the House Truckee First workshop, we will show some of these sites because they're currently vacant. And those are sites that will be talked about among many vacant sites within the community. But as part of that, we're also going to identify what the current allowances are on these properties so that people can educate themselves about just housing in general within the community. But it doesn't preclude us from processing applications or having that discussion. It just sort of puts them on a parallel track as you had previously directed us.
And actually, the impending general plan update could provide an incentive for would-be developers of these sites to hurry up and get their applications in and get their entitlements before the uncertainty that would come with the general plan update.
Okay. Thank you.
I had one other question. With the three development interests here tonight, what is the status of the three? Are the applications in? How long have they been in? That kind of thing. If you could address all three of them.
The only formal application that we have in is for the village, and they submitted at the end of 2017 with comments back from staff, and then it took them maybe 6 months to resubmit. So they just resubmitted in October, I believe. The other two, the cottage site and then the Parcels DNF, those are kind of a package right now. We have had pre-applications for each of those projects, but nothing formal.
Thank you.
Would it be appropriate to let those people talk this evening if they would like to?
Yeah, I think any public comment on this would be appropriate. I think if they choose to, the developers or others.
Okay. Any other questions? We'll open this to public comment. Please line up. State your name. You've got 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Dale Creighton, and I'm an SCO Planning Engineering, and I represent the village at Gray's Crossing. A couple things that I'd like to just highlight tonight, and for a little bit of clarification on how we see things, is that we're very concerned about being lumped in with the other undeveloped properties for some very specific reasons. And I also want to point out that from the inception of the Gray's Crossing plan, the village was always intended to be a separate entity from the common developer. There's an assumption clause in the development agreement that allows specifically for that, for a commercial developer of the village and also for a specialized developer of the affordable housing units. So right in 2004, it was adopted, that assumption agreement was formulated, and the property went to what was called Gray's Crossing, the Village at Gray's Crossing LLC. And it's been under that umbrella until about 3 years ago. And in that time, there was actually a commercial development plan approved by the town, and construction commenced. There was 45 townhomes approved, a convenience store, a grocery store, a future lodging facility, and the alike. Construction started on 17 of those townhomes. All the infrastructure through the village, the main road was built, sewer and water utilities have been supplied. The plan that we currently have on file follows those basic infrastructure requirements. So over the years, we've been working with staff, and we've constantly heard, you know, it's too much commercial. We don't want to compete with the downtown. So we crafted a plan to reduce the commercial and get away from the large areas, drop the grocery market out of the facility, and those things. We think if you look at the specific plan on the section for the village and what it says for the village, it's very specific. 45 townhomes, office retail, service station, 21 lofts, convenience store. Those are all the elements that we have in our plan. There also is this issue of a church and a community center. In the development agreement itself, there was a sunset clause for the community center that within 4 years, if nothing came forward, that requirement would go away. In addition to the church was a concept that was put in, I think, to lack for a better word, political purposes at the time. It was intended, it was about a 3,000 square foot building, and was intended to be an ability for a common face to come together and build one facility that they can share. That never came forth, and so there's never been any interest in that church site since the day the specific plan was approved. We're concerned that we're going to get it lumped into this zoning. My 3 minutes up? Is that 3 minutes?
3 minutes.
Can I wrap it up?
Go ahead and wrap up, Dale. You're representing one of the developers.
Yeah, I think what I want to point out tonight, we don't want to get into a rezoning and a plan amendment thing that costs us delay. We've had an application, a complete application for a development permit and a tentative map accepted by the town for over a year. We've been working with the town to address their concepts on architectural reviews, so we've been in the process. We have a plan. We have all those things put into place. We would like to see us be able to go forward and to be evaluated on our merits. As far as the requests that the town has put forth, we don't really have a problem with them. In terms of the affordable housing, we've already agreed to provide a 15% affordable housing clause in our plan. In terms of the density, we think we're following what the specific plan says for the village. We have no problems with a 117-foot cap. Again, I pointed out the sunset clause for the community center, and to support the reduction of commercial, we went ahead and got an economic assessment to indicate that that's a valid use for a valid amount of square footage for the area and the surrounding area. So we believe we're on solid ground, and again, we'd like to be able to, don't want to get into a situation where we're changing the rules in midstream. We've got a lot of investment here, a lot of architectural plans, a lot of development plans. We're in the final stages of the actual review process and going for a public hearing, and that's why we're afraid to get in lumped with projects that are in the process of developing their plans. So with that said in mind, I don't think we're far apart. We'd just like to be able to keep going forward with the application that we currently have accepted on file for a development permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale.
Mayor D, fellow council members. My name is Hayes Parziebach, and I'm with Paradigm 8 Partners. We're a development company that's based here in Truckee. We are the developers who submitted a pre-development application on parcels D and F. And I think tonight we're here basically to say that we support the staff's direction in this amendment relative to those parcels. And we think that the most important piece for these projects to move forward is to basically define some clarity as it relates to the specific plan. I think when we submitted our pre-development application, it became pretty clear pretty fast that the lack of specificity was making it difficult for staff to be able to push our project forward. And so I think for us, our critical path is working with staff to get the specific plan in a place where they can review a project and push it forward. We would like to bring forward a very housing and affordably restricted package, but we need that amendment to be able to do so. And so we would encourage your council to work with staff to prioritize this amendment, because I think that the sooner the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Hayes.
Mayor D, council members, Vince Sosenkowski, Acme Development, Tahoe City resident. We are looking at the cottages piece. Probably most efficient just to say ditto to what Hayes said. The parcel is challenged with a bit of ambiguity, and from our point of view, we definitely support what staff is suggesting. A little less ambiguity would be helpful. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Don't be shy. We'll close public comment. Discussion, thoughts?
I'm thinking it might be useful to take each one of those at a time. Yeah, you had slides with each topic, and maybe we, if you guys agree with that.
Okay, hot topic of the day, affordable housing.
I'm going to go with yes.
One point I just would interject was on this one in particular. The 15% and the workforce housing represent the minimum. It's our basic, which obviously creates clarity. Our understanding, based on the pre-applications, particularly parcels D and F, possibly cottages, the interest is to do substantially more. So we believe that the chances of getting substantially more workforce, locals or affordable is quite high.
So I was going to add a caveat to that, yes, in that if the village site, since they already have an actual application in place, that if this changes in any way, the submittal, the rules that they were operating under, that that would be those requirements that were in place when they submitted, or what they submitted, as long as that application is pending and current, that those rules still apply.
That seems fair. I would agree with that.
Agree. And I think maybe just to preface, when we go through all four of these, I think what we're doing, I think the staff recommendation is recognizing that times have changed, conditions have changed, markets have changed, and I think it's important that we recognize that and think in terms of flexibility and adaptability along the way. So I think these recommendations seem to be addressing that.
Yes, I think we have strong agreement on this. The only thing I would add, I think that the Coburn crossing kind of process is still a really good example in my mind, where the developer approached us and we had a very collaborative conversation and ended up being able to put town money, general fund dollars, towards a larger deed restriction and I think a better project overall. And so I support this as the minimum, but I also am very much in support of the conversations that I think are ongoing about how to do it really well.
And recall that when we say minimum, it also includes the ability to do the alternative affordable equivalent, which was Coburn, and that would be included in this. And we suspect that may be what happens here.
Great.
Any other comments on the housing element? Okay. Density?
Sure. With another caveat, in that, that I think the goal being to maximize the potential. So, allowing flexibility, whether that's through DUEs, some other mechanism, I think it's good to have additional options that we don't currently have for those sites.
Yeah, to echo that, I am strongly in support of allowing the conversion of single-family to attached residential units. I'd be really wary of it going the other way. I don't think anyone's really pushing for that, but it might be worth a few extra words to just say we like the flow to go that direction.
Agree. I think, when you think about these sites, they sort of stood out anyway. When you look at the whole of Grace Crossing, most of the single family has been spoken for, and these sites were unique in that they offered the opportunity for higher density. So I think, heading in that direction and giving allowances to increase density on these sites makes sense.
Well, just looking at our needs and demands in the community, higher density makes a lot of sense. Okay. She's taking notes and changing screens as fast as she can.
I guess we touched on that already, but...
Okay, use of the DUE.
Well, I don't know. I would actually lump this in with the previous slide, and that comments remain the same.
Yep. Yeah, totally agree. This is hitting right on the point of flexibility and encouraging smaller units, more variety in unit types. So I think that's definitely a good thing for the community.
Have we used this anywhere else in town, or is this a new?
It's been in our development code for a little while, but we haven't had anyone approach us. I think it's generally been the other way, where developers want to build larger homes and less density. However, we have had recently more interest in this DUE calculation.
Great.
And this really gets at the issue of affordability in a way, design or affordability through design that we hear about.
And this is an example of one of those areas of flexibility that just it wasn't in the code in 2004, wasn't thought about, and is something that it's kind of a modernizing and recognizing smaller units, et cetera, as you said.
To clarify, it has been in the development code, but we didn't include it in the specific plan because that has been in effect since the town incorporated. It's just like Yumi said, nobody's really using that as an opportunity.
Mm.
So I'm likely to phrase this poorly, so I'll just open with that. So the way I read this is essentially staff's recommendation on lowering the commercial square footage is more or less in line with the current application in?
This question is, yes, if you wanted to go the more flexible route, it would be more beneficial to the applicant.
So yes, staff's recommendation is more or less in line with the current application.
I'll help out here.
They're proposing for less commercial square footage than is currently allowed under the current development agreement and specific plan.
Yeah, I mean, what we think would be beneficial is to allow the flexibility in the plan. That way, when this goes to the Planning Commission, they have a tool to use to be able to analyze the economic analysis that was done in comparison to the project that they're proposing, where right now there's just not that real discretion in the plan. So I think we generally support the reduction, but I think what we want us to see is that included in the plan itself.
So I guess my question then, I'll take that as a qualified yes, is...
It is qualified.
What is, from their point of view, with an active application in, where does that put their application? Are they on, are you processing it as if this is a separate discussion, or is this somewhat pending the outcome of our direction?
I think your direction would be sufficient if this project is ready to go to Planning Commission, before we get all of this work done.
All right, so we're not going to be you're not going to be waiting, you're not going to be holding them up and waiting specifically for the general plan process to kick in and formally. Okay.
No, not at all. And even on the shorter time frame, taking the actual changes for the specific plan back to Planning Commission and then back to you, which we were trying to do before March. You being council. The council. The council body.
Thank you.
I think the concern was that with the language that's in the specific plan, it's not clear if it's a Build 2 number or not. So we wanted more clarity today to see if that's
right.
Yeah, that's also my understanding, that the flexibility, all we're asking is, do we want to be flexible in allowing less than 47,000 square feet to be built? To me, that it's a very clear yes. In terms of what council direction would be helpful or needed, if any, beyond that, I'm not sure. It sounds like just the yes there might be all we need, and let the kind of current rules and the process move forward.
Yeah.
Great.
I agree with what Morgan said. It seems logical and appropriate to be more flexible here. So.
Agree. Yeah, I think, again, this goes back to the comment about things have changed, the market has changed, demand has changed, and I think we've got to be flexible and recognize that. And at least from what I understand, we haven't seen the proposal yet, but it seems to be in the spirit of what was originally envisioned, even with a mix and maybe less this or less that. But I think, the concept of a village center of some kind, neighborhood center, still seems to be intact.
Okay. Cleanup. Sorry. I need to do that, yes.
This one arguably could be interpreted that it already is true. In other words, if it's silent on it, you sort of go back to code. But because there are some specifics about things, this would make it explicit. So this one really is just kind of adding the belt to the suspender.
So I'll go with yes with no caveats.
Put it in writing. This is how we're going to do it.
Makes sense, yeah.
No questions. Okay. Anything else you need clarity on? She's shaking her head. Whoops, she went away. I think you need to go back to that last one.
No actions required.
I don't think we have an action here. I think we're...
You got your direction.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much, Yumi. We will move to item 7.2, the Yorga Ranch Environmental Impact Report Addendum. And David?
Yes, Mayor D. I will recuse myself from this item as I'm involved with a development located within the Yorga Ranch specific plan area.
I'm getting worried about all this time you're spending in that little
There's
dark room.
a lot of cookies back there. So.
It's only because I can't eat them, so you can have mine. Okay, we have a whole team on this one.
Okay, thank you. I'll just jump right into it. The Yorga Ranch specific plan is a specific plan that includes the area adjacent to the 267 Brockway Road, Soaring Way intersection, and includes 67 acres and includes all four quadrants of that intersection. It allows for various land uses, including commercial, retail, office, industrial, workforce housing. And the plan was adopted in 2015, and at the time the plan was adopted, it was an EIR, Environmental Impact Report, was also certified by Town Council. When the plan was developed, it was not really known what areas would develop first or what type of phasing would be proposed. And so the plan does include a fair amount of flexibility regarding timing and phasing of improvements. This is detailed in the staff report, and here's some sort of quotes in here that's on this slide here. But it did provide that reasonable interim improvements could be allowed, or incremental improvements, or alternative improvements. And there was also some specific language relating to the Truckee Tahoe Lumberyard project. If it relocated, it was trying to encourage relocation of that use, and if it relocated within a certain time frame, it would be exempt from certain requirements. So this EIR, the EIR for the Jorgen Ranch specific plan was finalized, most of the mitigation measures were written and it was completed prior to the specific plan actually being finalized. And it appears that some of the mitigation measures were not adequately updated to reflect the final specific plan language, and specifically the flexibility that the specific plan has in terms of timing of infrastructure improvements. So really the purpose of tonight's item is to kind of clean that up and provide that consistency between the EIR mitigation measures and the specific plan and the intent of that specific plan. So an example of how this has played out is the Soaring Ranch project. That project was approved earlier this year by Council on March 13, 2018. It allowed for the development of a regional shopping center in what is referred to as Parcel 1 in the Jorgen Ranch specific plan. And this figure on the right-hand side is sort of it's part right out of the specific plan, and it depicts sort of the infrastructure improvements that are associated with that Parcel 1 where Soaring Ranch is located. And it includes on-site and off-site trails, improvements to the 267 Brockway Road intersection, and also the Soaring Ranch, a roundabout at Soaring Way and Jorger. And so the project-specific conditions of approval for Soaring Ranch allowed for some phased trail improvements, and it also allowed that the infrastructure improvements, the trails and the intersection improvements, could occur concurrent with the building development. And so the infrastructure improvements just need to be built before the buildings were occupied. What the EIR mitigation measures don't provide that same flexibility. They state that the infrastructure needs to be built before the building permits can be issued, and so that doesn't allow those improvements to occur at the same time. And this sort of situation would occur in all the other parcels within the specific plan. So we did receive a request from all the property owners that own property in the specific plan area to allow the issuance of building permits and grading permits prior to the completion of the infrastructure improvements. And so that is something that is being addressed in the proposed addendum. This is detailed there's a lot of detail on the addendum justification in the staff report, but essentially, as long as any of these 4 items aren't met, if one of these 4 items is met, you would have to do a subsequent EIR, but because they aren't, we've determined that there's no new impacts associated. All we're doing is changing some mitigation measures, and so an addendum is the appropriate way to make those changes. So just to kind of recap what the mitigation measure changes are, they're detailed again in the staff report, but they relate to the timing of infrastructure improvements. There's 8 revisions proposed total for 8 mitigation measures. 5 relate to the timing of infrastructure improvements. 2 relate to just consistency with our traffic impact fee program and when those fees are collected. And 1 relates to just consistency with our most recent stormwater permit. So the staff report, what we're recommending tonight is the adoption of Resolution 2018-78, and that does a few things. So first, it would approve the specific plan EIR addendum, and it would also amend the mitigation monitoring reporting program associated with that, the Jorgen Ranch specific plan EIR. But would also amend the conditions of approval related to the Soaring Ranch specific plan and also the Soaring Ranch project, because those conditions of approval actually either incorporate or directly quote the mitigation measures that were part of the EIR. The other change that's in the resolution is change of the conditions of approval to Soaring Ranch conditions of approval that would that would require that not only would the improvements need to be built prior to the buildings being occupied, but it would require a bond or some sort of financial security or bond before the grading permits or building permits were issued. So kind of just to sum it all up, we look at this, or staff is looking at this as a sort of just a minor cleanup item. The kind of the results, especially as it relates to infrastructure improvements and the timing, is sort of the same. The improvements would be built before the buildings are occupied and before the potential impacts would be generated. So you kind of get to the same result. It just allows them to sort of work on the building and the improvements at the same time. So with that, our recommendation tonight is to adopt Resolution 2018-78, which would take the following actions. It would approve the Georgia Ranch Specific Plan Environmental Impact Report Addendum, modify the Mitigation Monitoring and Reporting Program that's in the EIR, amend the Georgia Ranch Specific Plan Conditions of Approval, and amend the Swearing Ranch Conditions of Approval. So happy to answer any questions. I kind of breezed through that a little quickly, but there was a lot of detail in the staff report, and I thought I highlighted the stuff that I thought was important. So,
thank you, Becky. Jenna, anything to add, or just observing tonight? Questions?
Sorry, I couldn't help myself. I was to add one thing to that. I think it's a great report. This looks like a tremendous change, all these large words and big things like specific plans and EIR, but we really look at it very, very differently. I think the staff report's very clear on that this really is a cleanup item simply to align the words in a couple of these conditions and mitigations. And I think Becky said it just perfectly at the end. I'll just reiterate, the initial intent was to make sure that the needed infrastructure for any given development component was there, built, and ready to go the day that the impact occurred, the day that first car hits the parking lot or the doors of the store open. This does exactly the same thing. It just gets there in a slightly more flexible way.
So just to remove any possible remaining flesh on this horse, there's no actual changes to any of the mitigation measures. It's strictly a timing mechanism.
The measures do change. The language and the mitigation measures changes because the mitigation measures talk about the timing.
Okay, let me rephrase that then.
But the same improvements are required.
They don't change the intent, or the actual constructed mitigation measures don't change.
Correct.
Thank you.
And asked this already, but for everyone's, to make it part of the discussion, what's our standard practice for projects on the timing? Is it typically tied to the certificate of occupancy or the issuance of the building permit?
So in this example, we've got a development project that has off-site infrastructure requirements. So our typical practice there would be to make sure that the off-site infrastructure is constructed before the development opens to the public. So this action would be consistent with our practice on other projects.
And then, thank you, Dan. And then how does the bonding work on this? Like, can you just walk us through kind of the timeline for what that means?
Sure. So what would happen is there would actually be an agreement. So there'd be a contract between the town and the developer where the developer would commit to getting certain things done, certain infrastructure constructed on a certain timeline. Part of that agreement would identify the value of those improvements. That would be determined through a combination of the developer's engineering team and then us reviewing those cost estimates. And then the bond would be put in place, which is effectively a financial guarantee that the terms of the contract are complied with. So that's the Reader's Digest version of how that would work.
And we do have a letter in our possession that they have agreed to post that bond.
Yes.
And do you typically do a contingency because construction costs obviously change?
Yes, we try to make sure that the cost estimates are realistic. There's some language in the Subdivision Map Act that precludes us from adding a straight up contingency. However, what we do look at are soft costs, such as project management, construction management, attorney's time associated with dealing with calling a bond, those types of things. So we build those costs into the contract amount, and that's typically around 25% of the construction value. So that's how we come up with that number.
And then, you know, worst case scenario, hypothetical, kind of let's say that the building is completed and they're raring to go to start generating sales and tax revenue for the town, and the infrastructure isn't completed. What's the mechanism there that kind of ensures this agreement is completed?
So there's other conditions in the project approval that require the infrastructure to be completed before the building can be occupied. So that's the primary mechanism, is if the infrastructure isn't complete, they haven't complied with their mitigation measures, we would withhold a certificate of occupancy.
And at that point, the developer would have spent a lot of money to get the building built and the infrastructure even partly done. So the developer would have a tremendous incentive to finish it off.
Yeah. Great.
No, my questions were answered. Thank you.
Okay. I think to clarify some of your questions, if they don't do it, and not something that we would ever do lightly, but we have, unfortunately, a very good example of a bond that was posted and a project not completed, and we called the bond, and the bond company completed the project. So you know it will be completed if they post the bond, which they've agreed to do. But that is also a second guarantee to that happening, other than just the money they've already invested and don't want to lose, obviously. So there's a lot of guarantee to this process, and it's been proven. And it's emotional. Any other questions? We will open this to public comment. Come on, Jay. Come on, Joan.
I was going to follow Art. I thought he was going to. Hi. Good evening, council members and Mayor D. Joan Jones here as a representative of a property tenant on the Yerger parcel. And this really is, I support staff's recommendation and council discussion so far on this. This really is following inconsistently with other projects and how they've been managed. I think this was, just a clerical almost error in the combination of the two reports, and that there is many assurances that the mitigation measures would be performed. And I think council can be comfortable with that, and it does help move the Yerger Ranch specific plan and Soaring Ranch forward, and I think that's beneficial to everyone. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Anyone else? Public comment is closed. Deliberations, recommendations, a movement, a motion, whatever.
Well, if no one has any other discussion items, I would move that we adopt Resolution 2018-78.
I would second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay. David.
4 more to go.
Huh?
Only 4 more.
Get that cookie out of your hand. Okay, we'll move to 7.3, a public hearing on affordable housing in lieu fee, update and workforce housing ordinance review. And oh, Yumi's back.
Here we are again on in lieu fees.
We missed you.
So this is our annual in lieu fee update, review and update. So I'll just give you a quick overview. You guys are well informed about what the in lieu fees are and what they're used for. But just to provide some background. This in Luffy, affordable housing is required for all residential projects. 15% of all residential projects are required to be affordable. Non-residential projects that generate more than 7 employees are also required to provide affordable housing. So fee payments of in lieu fees are allowed to meet the affordable housing requirements for small projects of 6 parcels or less, and the developer can choose to either pay the in lieu fee or build a unit for affordable, with an affordability restriction. And large projects, it's up to the town's discretion. It'd be a request from the developer whether or not an in lieu fee would be appropriate, or if the town would prefer actual construction of the units. Generally, I would say that the town's preference is to have a unit be constructed. The payment of the in lieu fee is also allowed when a fraction of a housing unit is required by the affordable housing requirements. So last year we went through a process of having BAE look at what an appropriate in lieu fee would be for the town. So this council adopted a new in lieu fee amount based on local funding percentage, so requiring a percentage of the construction cost of each unit as an in lieu fee. This was based on the anticipated and hopeful subsidy the town could provide to future projects. So 20% of the cost of construction of each unit was identified as the goal for future projects. So out of the average cost of construction of one unit was found to be $440,000, and 20% of that was $87,718, which was adopted as the in lieu fee in 2017. Also, as part of that process last year, the council also adopted a new update process for the next 5 to 10 years. This method is staff created. BAE took a look at it and kind of gave it thumbs up that it was an adequate way to move forward in the interim before we do a comprehensive update, since we don't want to do a comprehensive update every year. So we would use the 2017 in lieu fee as the baseline, and then using average home values based off of the Tahoe Sierra Board of Realtors database. We use that as an index, and then also incorporated the construction costs based off the engineering news record. And then we also adjusted for the Nevada County income limits, although I would have to mention that that income has not changed significantly or at all for many years. So this is a short-term update process that was identified to be allowed to continue for 5 years, with a check-in at 5 years, and to determine if we wanted to continue it to 10 years. Of course, any time the town council can say, go back and do a new comprehensive update. We need more information, but in the interim, we'll use this update. And then, of course, the general plan update may inform future updates or a new comprehensive update if necessary. So based off the calculation that was adopted as part of the short-term measure by the council last year, the index found that that the in lieu fee should increase 6.9%. So the proposed in lieu fee today is $93,783. So our recommendation today is to adopt Resolution 2018-78 and approve the updated in lieu fee based off of the 2017 adopted calculation process.
Thank you, Yumi. Questions?
Didn't we just adopt 2018-78 on item 7.2?
In the staff report, this is 76.
2018-76.
But good catch.
Let me change that.
Yumi, just a quick refresher on the inflation rate year over year, 6.9. I know it seems higher than the normal inflation rate for consumer goods, but again, that was based on three factors, right? The housing price, ENR, the engineering, and what was the third?
The income limits for Nevada County.
Okay.
Which wasn't a factor this year since there was no increase or decrease.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Morgan? No?
Honestly, I'm shocked that there's not more questions or discussion on this.
No more questions? Okay, we'll open it up to public comment.
My name is Matt Hansen. I'm actually a member of Tahoe Sierra Border Realtors, so familiar with the housing numbers. I think it's just very important to understand that, you know, this increase in costs and cost of housing and building and all of that, while incomes are not increasing. So our affordable housing issue is compounded by all of that. So I think this is good stuff.
Thank you, Matt. Anyone else? Close public comment.
Thought of one last question.
Sure.
What's in the pool today in terms of, you know, what's the number at right now in terms of what's been collected?
Our reserve.
Do we know our reserve roughly? Ballpark's fine.
I would say off the top of my head, we didn't collect any affordable housing in lieu fees this past year. I would say the one major residential project is Coburn Crossing, and that is actually providing its affordable housing on site. So,
right. So we have no reserve, is what you're saying.
Well, I mean, we have some funding in our housing funds, but we have many projects that have money dedicated to them that haven't called that money yet, including the artist lofts. If you were to deduct out all of our commitments that we've made, last I looked, it was maybe around $500,000 of money that we have available.
After deducting everything.
After deducting our commitments, yeah.
I think that was what the question was.
I would just add congratulations and thank you for a very smooth process for updating this number. Let's hope that the trend continues and that we've aligned on a process that'll serve us for 5 or 10 years to come. And not seeing anyone else jump, I would move that we adopt Resolution 2018-76 to approve an updated affordable housing in lieu fee based on the adopted annual review process.
I would second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Item 7.4 is a public hearing to consider 2018 Development Code Update, Ordinance 2018-18. The Development Code amendments, Donner Lake Development Standards, Development Envelopes, Minor Use Permits, General Property Development Standards, Signs, and Cleanup Amendments. And we have a tag team again.
Maybe just before they get started, because I want to pull a card from Jeff here. If you recall, we had a project with Mr. Glasner, which was near Old Greenwood, and he had come to you on appeal, or was going to come to you on appeal. And for that one, we're actually going to do some development code amendments to maybe help with that process, and he is on vacation right now. So instead of including those in here, we've set that aside to have further conversations with him in the hope that he will not continue with his appeal in front of council. So although it's not completely related to what we're talking about, it is, because we did remove some of those changes we were going to consider so that he can have an opportunity to look at them before he decides how he wants to move forward.
Thank you, Danielle.
I just wanted to say we promised you that we were done with development code updates, and we ended that process, and we did. But here we are with some development code updates, so sorry.
The town attorney likes to tell us it's a living document.
Well, this is my last opportunity to make this statement, so I can't really let it go. That I was told in 2007 that this would be an 8-week process of updates.
Yeah.
Just saying.
All right, ladies, are you ready?
We're ready.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So Yumi and I are here to jointly present the Development Code amendments that we took to Planning Commission in October. So this is just a quick overview of the topics that they reviewed and that we're bringing to you. There was one additional item that they requested we do some additional work on. That was the illegal second units. We were trying to figure out a way to address those, and they thought that there might be some better ways to do that. So we pulled that item, and we'll be looking at that some more. So we'll start with the Donner Lake Development Standards.
We have very specific standards for Donner Lake, and the purpose of those is really to preserve the impacts or prevent impacts to the visibility to the lake and the view sheds. So there's right now a side yard setback requirement that for every 5 feet of additional height, you have to do this additional side yard setback. It gets pretty complicated for applicants to figure out how to apply that to their projects. It's also complicated for us to figure out how to apply it to the building permit. So we looked for a way to simplify that, make it easier. So what we came up with was to basically go with our standard 10-foot side yard setback, say that's a firm line, so you can't have projections into that. You don't get the benefits that you get in other parts of town for having a narrow lot, things like that. So basically, your 10 foot is your 10 foot, and you don't have to do these additional calculations based on height. Planning Commission didn't have any modifications to that, so they recommended that that be approved as proposed. And I'm thinking we'll run through these. If you want us to stop, we can talk about them, or we can just kind of talk at the end. You can run it. So the next item is development envelopes. We currently in the general plan, there's a few places and in the development code that talk about building envelopes. We don't have a definition for that right now, and what we found in doing some research is that a building envelope is defined in the building code differently than how we actually use it. So how it's used in our projects is to look at what the disturbance area on a parcel should be and how that's defined. So we came up with a definition to try to explain that, make that clear for applicants. And there was one change that the commission wanted to make to that, and that was to specify that removal of vegetation outside the building envelope would be allowed for fuel reduction and fire prevention. So we incorporated that into the definition, which is in your staff report. Next is minor use permits. This is almost a cleanup item. We noticed some inconsistencies in the code that we're talking about use permits in terms of development of a parcel versus actual use. So there were some findings that weren't really applicable to use permits. And then we also have this minor use permit requirement for residences that are over 7,500 square feet. And right now it doesn't specify that you also need a zoning clearance for that. So we wanted to add that in just to make it clear what the process is. And Planning Commission didn't have any changes for that.
So our height measurement in our development code is from the average point of natural grade to the highest point. We also have some allowances within there that encourages terracing down steep hillsides or just terracing and breaking up the massing. So creating smaller masses and larger masses to break up the massing, the general size of appearance of the building. We have a split roof definition that allows you to average the height of each section so that it can give you some flexibility in the design of your building. However, with this definition, it's pretty minimal what the threshold is. It's creating a 5-foot height difference and ensuring that the actual split roof is 10 feet in distance horizontally. So it's a pretty small change in massing that encourages. And it also encourages, thus far it seems, that just tacked on components of the building that don't actually change the massing but do benefit the project greatly in terms of how much height they can get. So looking at this project, these are things that have triggered this discussion about whether or not we should change our split roof definition. So as you see in the upper right hand corner, there's this small tacked on little office shed on the corner that has reduced this entire mass to be in compliance with our code. But the total height of the building is approximately 45 feet. So it's quite a bit higher than our general 35-foot allowance. We're also, as part of that, we're requiring that a 30% ratio of that split roof as part of the entire roof structure of the building to ensure that it is making some difference to the actual design of the building. Also, we're proposing to reduce the maximum height of a structure at any point to 5 feet above the height of the maximum height. So in single-family residential, you're allowed a 35 height limit generally, but you can, any point of that building can be 40 feet. That would be the requirement instead of 45 feet, which is the current requirement or allowance. It should be noted that we do have some more allowances that we can provide to projects on steeper lots. So the 40-foot maximum doesn't apply to those. It would be a higher maximum. As you can see also on this bottom image, this tacked on feature on the right reduces the height of the whole building. It's clearly just a very small component of the project. This is just a diagram of how you would measure that split roof. Additionally, our setback requirements, we have a setback requirement for rear parcels that are irregularly shaped that come to a point, and it's a little bit of a complex calculation where you find the distance where each property line is 5 feet from the other, and then that's considered your rear property line, and you measure your property line from there. When it comes to projects with obtuse angle rear setback points, it's caused some confusion for our applicants. So we wanted to just make it clear to provide an avenue for them to understand our development code. So we just said for obtuse angles, it's just both of the property lines are considered rear property lines, and 20 feet, it would be a 20-foot setback from there. And then additionally, we have an allowance within our development code that allows for steep lots of 25% in slope, that you can reduce your front yard setback to 10 feet as opposed to 20 feet. We just wanted to make it clear in there that that's just a hard line. No projections can go beyond that. It wasn't clear before, so there was some discussion about whether we would allow decks in that front yard setback. Additionally, based off of a planning commissioner's request, we were at our last sign code discussion, we removed the temporary banners from we only allowed banners 30 days prior to and 30 days prior to a business opening. So basically a grand opening sign, even though that's not what it says. But the planning commissioner requested that we reinsert that. So we just basically put in the same language as before, where you're allowed to have a temporary sign for 90 days total, whether that's a banner or an A-frame sign or some combination of those two. And then we have some cleanup amendments.
So the first one is something that our town attorney actually, we worked with him on. We previously were treating use permits like all of our other land use permits and saying that they had a 2-year expiration. And based on case law, he determined that that does not apply to use permits and minor use permits. So we wanted to clean up that language and make it clear that it doesn't apply to those particular permits.
And then we've just finished up our election season, but we found that during this last season we needed to clarify some language within our election signage or signs during election periods. So we wanted to clarify that signs have to be ground mounted and clarify the square footage requirements for each face rather than a combined square footage. We were finding that the 8 square feet total was, or 8 square, I think it was 16 square feet total was just being used on one face when the intent was to be 8 square feet on each face. And then we incorporated a height requirement of 3 feet. Interestingly, our planning commission just wanted to get rid of election signs altogether, but we couldn't quite find that route. Well, we have a couple candidates, or a candidate. Also, as you may recall at our last sign code discussion, we incorporated a component of the sign code within the sign code that allowed for an additional wall sign on parcels within our historic downtown on corner parcels to allow for additional business identification. The language that we inserted in there was to allow it within the downtown study area. Based on a re-review of our language, we noticed that the downtown study area is actually quite a large space that goes all the way down to 89 South along West River Street. We believe that the intent was to do it in our downtown core, where it's our most unique character, has the most commercial interest, and we wanted to provide that benefit to our historic downtown. But if that's not the intent, we can, of course, discuss that. So additionally, we wanted to clarify that off-site signs, including billboards, are prohibited within our town. I believe that it somehow got removed from our development code, probably my fault, on accident. And then to clarify that night sky compliant lighting is not required for internally illuminated signs, since that would be difficult, and require that signs are warm in temperature, sign lights are warm in temperature and minimal in brightness. And then other sign cleanup amendments, we reduced the subdivision sign allowance to 25 square feet. Originally, it was, it was like something like 60 square feet, which I don't know how that got incorporated. The 25 square feet was what was originally in our sign code. So that's consistent with the previous sign code before our most recent change. And then we incorporated signage for churches and places of worship, since that also got omitted. And then added in landscaping for ground-mounted signs within residential zones, consistent with the rest of the other ground-mounted signs in other zones. And then added language that required that lighting cannot trespass beyond the sign face. So that's all that we have. We've incorporated all of Planning Commission's recommendations within this, within the ordinance, and they have recommended adoption of Ordinance 2018-15, approving the Development Code amendments and finding the amendments to be exempt from CEQA.
Thank you, ladies. That was quite a mouthful. Any questions?
Well, just if you can briefly, since height limits are near and dear to my heart over the years, what's the driving factor? I mean, have you been seeing substantial numbers of houses coming in trying to really push that envelope?
Yes, I would say more so than usual. It's not every house that comes in, but it's many houses, more houses than we used to see.
And I'm assuming that you feel this will help remedy that or provide more consistency in design?
I think it'll help provide more direction and more clarity.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
No question, but just a comment. I just wanted to say I'm glad that there's someone looking at all this. I mean, this is really tedious, painstaking work to be going through the development code in this kind of detail. And sort of imagine you go into some special room to do this, but
a padded one.
Yeah, with padded walls.
Padded, no windows. Okay. Anyway, I just wanted to commend the work, because I know there's a lot that goes into it behind the scenes. So,
my question's on the downtown plan boundary. So we've already made the amendment to allow the one additional wall sign in the whole downtown study area, and your proposal is that we would want to reduce that down.
Yes, that's correct. To the actual historic preservation overlay district.
Have we had any projects come in that have requested this outside of the historic district? I don't think we've built a lot outside of that.
No, I mean, the evolution of this was really to help existing buildings that had difficulty with frontage. So, I mean, the examples we have are what used to be Spirit Gallery, which will turn into Troquet, and then 1882 are some examples of just, they've got some interesting access, and so for them to have some other opportunities, I think Laura processed one on Jaboom. Yeah. So it really was meant for sort of the constraints that you face within the historic downtown.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. We'll open this for public comment. We'll close public comment.
I'll go ahead and move.
Let me. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with this recommendation. I think that in my mind, it's not as much a historical constraints thing as it is just a walkability type of thing. To me, the types of buildings that we have downtown are the types that are on corners that, even if they don't have an entrance in a corner, the examples that we were looking at, I mean, Truckee Hotel and kind of the Dark Horse building, all are examples where you do just sort of, you have signs on both corners, and presumably that's a type of development that, while not trying to copy the historic downtown, I think that form is what we expect to see. And so I'd rather see a sign than a blank wall, on the new cute coffee shop in the rail yard, or kind of whatever these things are. So I'm just not sure this is necessary to limit it.
Maybe just to clarify a little bit too, that the rail yard was supposed to do their own comprehensive sign plan to come up with their own regulations. They haven't done that. We've been kind of processing them one-off as they've been coming in. So it's a little bit different than I think this boundary would include, because even right now it doesn't look like it includes all the rail yard, does it, Amy? Yeah.
No, it does.
No, it doesn't. Not unless the balloon tracks got moved on this.
The downtown study area includes the rail yard, but not the historic preservation overlay.
So we would need to think about the implementation of that also, if it includes all of the downtown study area.
And so what would the remedy be if you were outside of this proposed, out of the downtown study area, if someone wanted, if they had a specific building that this really makes sense for them?
They could ask.
Would they have to go through a comprehensive sign program, or?
We changed our code to allow for a deviation through just a regular sign plan, but essentially they would have to request it and have it be something that's architecturally compatible and a superior design to what our general standard sign plan would require. So there's a little more discretion in that, but that's...
Then we go to planning commission.
Generally with large projects, I mean, they would go to planning commission for their review, including their sign plan. So at that point, planning commission would be the review authority. If it was an existing building where they're just doing a tenant improvement or a change in use, then it would just likely be at the staff level.
And so that would be zoning administrator?
The community development director, general.
Person.
Different hats. Sort of. Yeah, just to kind of wrap up the thought on this, the development code always gives me a little bit of uneasiness in just the level of prescriptiveness and the level of specificity that we kind of drill down in terms of all the you can and can'ts. And this just seems like an area where I think that I'm not sure I see the benefit of adding this level of restriction. Curious if others want to join or not.
I don't have particularly strong feelings. You know, if there's a concurrence on being more flexible with the rest of the council, that would be fine with me as well. Just to clarify though, the area in turquoise is this downtown study area that we're talking about, correct?
Sorry, this is probably a very confusing image. The downtown study area is the black outline, and then the blue is the downtown study area, which is the same picture as this on the right.
So the blue is the gray on the right.
Yes.
And it's the downtown, and it is the downtown study or not?
This is the historic preservation overlay. So this is what we're proposing today to reduce it down to, and that's where the historic downtown is, where HPAC has its purview.
I see. Okay, so we're just missing a tag with an arrow pointing to the blue. Okay.
So can I ask, is there a benefit in reducing this boundary, or was this an attempt to clarify what was perceived as council direction from before? What is the benefit of having it in a smaller area?
I think from our perspective, the area that is the defining character of our community is the downtown core, which is essentially the commercial, historic preservation overlay district, as opposed to the more industrial areas down to the west, along West River Street and towards 89 South. That was our main discussion about why we would choose the historic preservation overlay district versus the downtown study area.
I don't have a huge amount of heartburn, surprisingly, over this, but given the limited number of potential impacted lots, I think a little more flexibility. I don't see a real huge downside to that. So I guess I would concur that it, leave well enough alone.
I think I agree with that.
All right. What was that?
Well, by well enough alone, I mean
strike this
as is.
recommendation.
Leave it as is with the larger boundary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's what I understood, and that's
Yes.
what you were advocating,
Well,
right?
just-
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Let's not do the thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But reword your.
Yeah. Okay. So with that, could we put up the recommendation? Yeah. There we go. With that, I move that we adopt ordinance 2018-15 with the one modification made just now, approving the 2018 Development Code amendments and finding the amendments to be exempt from
Second.
CEQA.
Get my last one in after 11 years.
Is that your last one?
Oh, you still got the audit to go. Don't worry.
No, development code wise.
Oh, okay.
We're going to sneak 15 in on December 11th.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay. We are up to 7.5, and this is a performance-based pay adjustment for the town attorney. And seeing no one from our finance department, he works for us.
I'll take care of
You'll
it.
take it or I will.
Kim often stands in for me. I will stand in for Kim on this one. Just a quick background. The council completed their annual performance appraisal of town attorney Andy Morris at their November 13th meeting, and the result of that then leads us to the staff recommendation that council approve resolution 2018-77, awarding $9,918 as a one-time performance-based pay amount to town attorney Andy Morris, and that's because Andy has reached the top of his range. So it's a one-time as opposed to an ongoing.
Thank
That's
you,
it.
Jeff. Questions?
Just kind of curious. This is not a bonus, right? It's not taxed as a bonus. It's a pay.
It's salary, so it's treated as salary. What it isn't, though, it doesn't get added to the perceivable amount that compounds over time. That's the difference. And many of our longer-term employees are in that place where they get the performance-based increase, but it doesn't actually, because they're at the top of the chart.
Mm-hmm. They've hit their maximum. Any other questions? Public comment. Close public comment. Action.
I would move that we approve resolution 2018-77, awarding a one-time performance-based paid to town attorney Andy Morris.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Council report. Okay, council reports. David, let's start that way this time.
Yeah, two things. November 16, I participated in a Nevada County Leadership Forum down in Nevada City, along with the mayor of Grass Valley, Nevada City, and a supervisor from Nevada County. Very nice event. And then on the 19th, sat in on the Sister City Committee meeting, and hopefully we'll be able to provide some updates from that committee relatively soon.
Okay. Jessica?
I attended with my children the Christmas tree lighting in downtown, which was wonderful. And then this afternoon, the police ceremony.
I've managed to have been traveling almost the entire time from the last meeting to this meeting, but I was sure to be at that meeting, and I was sure to be at this meeting, and nothing to report.
I only have one. I attended my last LAFCO meeting in Nevada City. So good luck to...
Why are you smiling?
Some of us actually find LAFCO stuff fairly interesting, and more importantly, it's I think along with Carolyn's NCTC services, fairly important role regionally. So
yeah. It is. Let's see. I did the Christmas tree lighting, the police ceremony today. Attended NCTC and mentioned already we got an award from Caltrans. Kelly B. did a wonderful report update on our transportation status. Yes, I did bail on David the last minute. Sorry, made him go to the county leadership thing. And I spent most of my time in bed as I had rather unplanned surgery last week, so, but doing better. Tomorrow, 4 to 5:30 at Philosophy is the last of our scheduled Talk of the Town seminars. We invite the public to come and join us, and we have a special guest appearance tomorrow with winter coming. Yes, it has come, it looks like. Dan Wilkins of Public Works, and he's going to come and talk to us about roads and plans and snow and all kinds of good things. So come down and sit down and chat with us. And this body will now move into closed session.